is like a 3-inch nasty scar on my shin, but otherwise I'm good.
What was that from?
During one of the swimming challenges, or I guess there was only one swimming challenge, but during that challenge, I bashed my shin on some cinder blocks that, in production's defense, they very much warned us were under the water, but I somehow managed to swim right into them. So,
Oh, so you have another memento from Surviving Reelfoot, just not one that typically people want.
no, it's kind of cool though to have like a little scar to remember things by.
Oh, because you were out there 7 days, and so like it takes a toll on you.
Yeah, no, it really does. It was very hard, like transitioning back into life afterwards. Just like emotionally, like the paranoia. I was watching anime with some friends and they started whispering, and I felt like my anxiety skyrocket. And I was like, they're just talking about spoilers they don't want me to know about. It's okay.
Have you? I guess, do you feel like you've kind of you've done fully decompressed from the game experience, or is that something that's still happening a bit?
I think I have. Every so often, I think as I'm watching people's interviews, I will have moments of like, what if? So that's the biggest thing that I'm still like going through is like, I'll go to my wife who has no answers for me. And I'm like, okay, I just need to like talk this through real quick. Like, what if I had done this, this, and this? And she's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, but
she's like, I can be a sounding board, but I can't help you with this.
Yeah. Which like that's the beauty of the game is like you never know. Like even if you talk to people afterwards about like what would you have done in this situation, like it's so different answering those questions post game versus when you're actually in the elements and doing everything.
Is your wife also a Survivor fan?
No. She has seen like the highlights. Like every time a cool moment would happen. So I like binged the whole show during the pandemic. I had started watching when I was 6, but then fell off. So when I was watching the whole thing, I would like go to her and be like, oh my God, this just happened. Here's some context. Now watch this scene. So she's kind of seen things that way. And she like gets the general strategy of it, but she is not a Survivor fan.
What's been her reaction to you going out to rural Tennessee for an 8-day period competing in Survivor?
I think she said, why are you doing this to me?
Not even why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you doing this to me?
Yeah, she was very concerned also. I'm like very competitive. So I think she was concerned that I was just going to do something dumb and hurt myself, which very fair.
Like swim into cinder block.
Swim into some cinder blocks, exactly. But no, she's super supportive of it. She knows that I love doing it. So yeah, it's been great. She was just like, now I have to take care of the dogs for like 9 days.
How many dogs do you have?
I have 2, and they're big, so they're kind of handfuls, but they're good.
So talk to me, how did you discover Surviving Reelfoot?
I have done a couple of orgs, I think 6 orgs at this point. And for one of them, shout out Survivor Stings, somebody, and I don't even remember who it was, but somebody had posted in the like alum Skype group that they were seeking applications, and I didn't even know LRGs existed. So I applied for that one. I actually applied for another one that another friend of mine who had just done an LRG sent to me. And I ended up getting cast for both and having to make a tough decision. But yeah, I had no idea this was a thing. Like I feel like every couple of months, I find out that the community is so much larger than I knew before. So it's been very fun to see.
It sounds like there was like no hesitation. Like you saw, it was like, yeah, of course I have to do this.
Yeah, and I should have hesitated a little bit.
In retrospect.
Yeah, I guess I just didn't think I was going to get cast. So I was like, let me just do this. Like, it'll be cool to like test myself in this way because I've applied for Survivor before. I'm like, let me see if I could actually do it. But then when I got cast, I immediately started panicking. Like, I did not want to go. Just for a month leading up to it, I was like not sleeping. I was telling everyone like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I was so close to wanting to drop out, but I also like know how hard production works and was not going to do that to them, but I was stressed.
So do you do anything to prepare for the game, or just like, I'm just going to roll in and deal with it when I get there?
I should have, but I was so much in denial. I did try to walk more because Pete had suggested that, but I ended up getting COVID and the flu in like weird periods of time where like I was recovering from it and then I would get sick with something new and then be recovering and then it was time to go to Reelfoot. So I feel like I did not actually do any preparation. I did learn to build a fire. So I made a fire once. And when I say fire, I mean I got it to spark flame once in my backyard. And then I think the day before when I was in the hotel in Union City, I looked up how to make rice on the fire and I looked up how to build a shelter.
Do you feel, in retrospect, is there anything you wish you had looked up or knew about going into the game?
Yeah, I wish I had watched any of it beforehand.
So you went in like completely blind. You're just like, I know it's a thing. I know people do it. I know it's 8 days. So let's do this.
Yeah, I mean, I watched maybe 25, 30 minutes of one of the earlier, like the earliest episodes that I could find on YouTube, I think. So I was like, okay, so it's basically Survivor, and then I stopped watching it. But I feel like I could have watched to be like, okay, where do they hide idols and things like that, and just to get a sense of like what the challenges would look like. No, I did none of that. I wish that I had practiced puzzles because I became known for being good at puzzles, which is not actually true. I'm not good at puzzles. So I wish I had actually practiced them so I could have been good at puzzles. Yeah, there's a lot that I wish I had done, honestly. I know people were like limiting their food intake beforehand leading up to the game, or like sleeping a little bit less to get used to like running on little sleep. I feel like all of that could have been very useful to me. I also didn't pack until the day before. So I just pulled things out of my closet. And then when I showed up, I was like, I am wildly underprepared for this situation. It's so cold. I do not have anything remotely useful for the freezing cold temps at night. So yeah, if I do this again, I will definitely prepare differently.
So what were some of the biggest surprises from playing a game, like, or things like you thought one thing and actually ended up being another?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest adjustment for me was just how much of an emotional toll it was going to take on me. I've definitely gotten emotional in orgs before, but I feel like I have played a more cutthroat game in orgs. Like I've been more willing to like cut a close ally if I need to. That was something that was really, and I didn't have to do it in this game, but I was contemplating it a lot, and it was really hard to reckon with the idea of doing that to someone when you're with them like day in, day out. Like it's just something about like huddling with people for warmth at night and like depending on them in that way, and then having to think about voting them out was just so much harder than I ever expected it would be.
Yeah, and let's make sure we talk about that kind of later on. It's like, as you're kind of like, do I flip? Is this my moment? I'm looking at people I'm standing with. Do I want to go further with them? I mean, the way your game evolves, like you said, you don't really have an option because you end up being on the bottom in a sense. But I think interesting of your tribe, you and Ethan kind of have some flexibility there. At least you're the last of the Okinas, the Musmifids, to be picked off, which it puts you in an interesting position of, if people swing, they need to use you to make that happen.
Exactly.
Do you feel like your experience in Reelfoot is going to change or affect how you watch Survivor or see the show?
100%. I think maybe the biggest thing, well, so two things. One, sometimes I watch Survivor and I'm like, these people are not smart. Like, why are you making these decisions? This is the dumbest thing you could do. But now, having been out there, my brain was not working. I could not do simple math. I was forgetting people's names. I said to Ethan at one point, Ethan's ready to go home, like to his face, like 3 times, because I just forgot that he was Ethan. And I was trying to say Danny. So
that's just day 3.
Yes, it was early. So like, yeah, just having a lot more grace for the decision making, because it's just so hard when you're that deprived and that paranoid to like process things properly and be able to make good decisions. And then the other thing I think is I just now I've never had to play from the bottom before in orgs. I guess I'm like lucky to say that. So that was a very humbling experience. And I think I have a lot more empathy for, because sometimes when I watch Survivor, when there's just a couple people sticking out from a minority alliance, I'm like, oh, get out of here. I want to see this like majority alliance go all the way. And now I'm like, I root for the underdogs because it's a sucky feeling for sure.
So what's one decision you think you would have made differently had you been well rested with food, etc.?
Oh boy. That's a great question. I'm honestly not, I don't think that I have a lot of regrets or things that I would have necessarily done differently. Actually, I guess the main thing would be at Merge. I was so hyper fixated on my relationship with Ethan and like whether I had like ruined things between us. And I think I could have had a lot more energy to put towards like building more connections at Merge. I think I had an opportunity right at that Merge vote to flip, and I didn't do it. And I didn't even really consider it because I was so focused on like repairing things with Ethan. So I think had I been a little more well-rested and well-fed and thinking more rationally, I would have been like, whatever, Ethan, like we'll figure it out later, and focused on being at Merge.
And you said this is kind of your first time you ever played from the bottom. What's your takeaway? or like what do you think is the best advice you've learned, or if you're never in a similar situation?
Gosh, the best advice, maybe try and keep your cool and don't, it's hard to play from the bottom and feel like you can't make any moves and be graceful about that. I think some people can do it. I think Ethan's a great example of someone who can do that well. I am not the best example of that. Maybe Melissa isn't the best example, or Tony isn't. I think we had a lot of feelings and emotions about the situation we were in. And I think it's fine for us to have expressed those, but I also think that, I don't know, maybe there would have been other opportunities if I had maybe been a little less honest about how I was feeling at tribal councils, but maybe not. And also, I don't know if I would like go back and change that, because I want to be, true to what I was feeling at the time. But yeah.
So you arrive at Reelfoot. You're you're in this liminal hour before the game begins. You're kind of seeing and meeting some of these other people who will be your competitors. Did you recognize anyone, or did anyone stand out to you?
I recognized no one, which I was really grateful for, because my plan going in was if I saw someone that I knew, that I would get them out immediately. I just didn't want anyone who had like seen me play before. Yeah, so I didn't recognize anyone, but people definitely stood out. I rode in with Jo. She was very chatty and she seemed very anxious, which calmed me down. So I felt like Jo was an interesting character for me. Blake seemed very like mischievous. I know other people have said that Blake was like making eyes at them. I also felt that Blake was making eyes at them.
Blake is the master of the making eyes at people.
He really is. So he looked like someone who might be chaotic, but that I was interested in talking more to. Ethan, Sandra, and Jeff I had ridden in with the day before, and I had really like vibed with Ethan a lot. So he was someone I noticed, but also felt like, oh, he's the type of person who will have like 10 final 3-packs and you don't know if you're the real one or not. So I was like, Danny seemed like someone I'd be friends with back home. Carl was super loud. I was honestly like mostly keeping track of who was really loud and hoping they weren't going to be on my tribe, because I feel like I'm an introvert. My social game does not do well when there are people who are like talking a lot. So I was like, okay, I don't want loud people on my tribe. And if there are loud people on my tribe, I want them gone.
And so let's talk about your original tribe. So you started on the Green Okina tribe, and so you're with Charlie, Ethan, who you mentioned, Hannah, German, Melissa, Tony, Melanie, Danny, who you mentioned, and Jo, who you mentioned. What's your thoughts looking at this initial tribe?
I felt pretty good about our tribe, actually. We pretty early on talked about our skills, and I thought that we had like a well-rounded group. So I felt good about it. I was, I think I vibed with pretty much everyone. Hannah and I were like bonding over being super scared of the spiders. Melissa had said something on the porch before the game started about like, there's a bunch of girls there, and she was like, this feels like a good group, like kind of implying like maybe Girls Alliance. So I was a little wary of Melissa maybe like right off the bat, because I don't really like doing the like gender alliance game. But yeah, everyone was good. Jo was very, very loud as I expected. And, very much had like a type A personality in a way that I also do. So I kind of knew right away that like that was going to clash. But otherwise I felt good about the tribe.
Did you have a strategy laid out coming into Reelfoot, or were you kind of, all right, tell me about it.
Yeah, no, I wanted to avoid playing the middle. I feel like that's my Achilles heel when I've played orgs in the past. I think I immediately fell into the middle anyway. And then I wanted to find someone who's just super different from me. So specifically someone who's going to be maybe seen as like a more physical threat, and work with them secretly, kind of collect side people to be in an alliance with, and then hopefully be able to do something at merge. So I think that's why I gravitated towards Ethan. Tony, I felt like Tony and I weren't going to have anything in common. And then I feel like we actually had a bit in common. But Ethan felt like a good candidate for me, as like, I wanted like a jock type. And I think Ethan was the closest I had.
Ethan was your meat shield?
Yeah, exactly.
So how are those opening hours of the game for you?
It was good. It was kind of stressful. Like I think the first thing that happened when we got to camp is I set my bag down and a bunch of spiders came like crawling out, and I was just like,
like, nope, done. I'm out. It's over.
I'm like, so I have such a bad spider phobia. Like I'll see a spider in a movie and scream. So I knew that was going to be the biggest like obstacle for me, at least initially. So I just felt like, oh my God, we're really doing this. And then you look around at the camp and it's so muddy, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to like this one bit. But yeah, it was a pretty chill. I remember the cast assessment saying we're like the Kumbaya tribe. I felt that was definitely the case. I think it was Melissa and somebody else. I don't even remember. Oh, maybe it was just Joe, Melissa and Joe, who wanted to make fire. And Melanie and I were like the naysayers. We're like, everything's wet. It's soaking wet. We're not making fire. But they really kept going at it. And eventually I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to just be negative. So I'll go help. And then we ended up making fire. And that was like a big bucket list item. Joe really wanted to make rice. So we made rice, even though I think most of us were like, we don't really need to eat right now. It's been, 4 hours. But yeah, it felt very Survivor in a very surreal way for me.
So I'd like to kind of hear your thoughts about twists and advantages. What's your philosophy around those? Do you want all the idols? Are you actively hunting for them, or just like, hey, if I just know where they are, that's good enough for me?
Yeah, I feel like if I need an idol to win the game, I'm not playing the game right. Like I don't really care about idols. Yeah, my strategy is always like have a good enough social game that I just know where things are, which I think I did in this case. There's a couple that I maybe found out about by accidentally searching people's bags, but otherwise, I was told where advantages were. So that's good enough for me. I would have loved to have an advantage secretly, but like most of the advantages I feel like people announce to the tribe. And so I wouldn't have wanted to be in possession of one of those. Yeah.
I feel in CBS Survivor, searching through bags is this strangely controversial activity where people get very up in arms, like online at least, like you shouldn't do that. That's unethical. I take it you have no qualms.
Well, listen. I did not have any plans to search any bags when I went out there. I swear.
What changed?
I really didn't. So I don't have an issue with it when I watch Survivor, because I'm like, you've signed up for this. And also production told us in the rules, you can search people's bags. So I was like, I'm probably not going to do it, but it's allowed. It's not like weird. But no, Tony, I searched Tony's bag. It was a total accident. I thought we were merging. Well, we were merging, I think, at that point. But anyway, I just grabbed a bag that had a T on it, and we have like similar handwriting too. I dumped everything out because before every challenge, I swear I was always in the back of the pack. I was like limping, I injured my leg, and like I'm carrying like all of my things on my arms because they won't fit in those like tiny bags that we had. So I was like, okay, if we're gonna merge, I need to present better, and I need to just repack all my things really nice. So I dumped everything out, and then I grabbed. I think what happened that I saw there were sunglasses at the bottom of the bag, and I was like, those aren't my sunglasses. And then I was like, oh my God, this is Tony's bag. I put everything back in, and then I'm like walking away with what I think is my buff, and there's something hard in it. And at that point in the game, that was like after Ethan and I had kind of fallen out. Yeah. So I was really stressed, and I was like, oh my God. And I start unraveling it, and I see the like burlap sack. I'm like, production hid an idol in my bag. This is amazing. Everything that I needed. And then Melissa like turned to me and was like, because I'm doing this like at like right in front of our shelter. Melissa turned to me and was like, since when did you get a pink buff? And I was like, oh my God, this is Tony's. And I just like threw it on top of the bag, which was like, it was at the bottom, so that wasn't even good for like re-hiding it. But yeah, no, that was a total accident. I did search Maddie's bag later on purpose, but I don't have any excuses for that one.
So you're saying you and Tony have something in common? It's your handwriting?
Yes, exactly.
So what about, you learned that redemption is in play. What was your thoughts on redemption coming into the season?
I kind of forgot about it. I don't think it really mattered to me much at the beginning. I mean, I thought it was a really good idea for somebody who gets voted out to have another chance, especially for folks who traveled. But I was hoping that I wouldn't have to use it. And, I felt pretty confident that if it came to voting people out, I could do so in a way where they weren't going to be super mad at me if they came back in. Which, I mean, Maddie came back in with a vengeance, I think. But yeah, I wasn't too worried about redemption.
You also have fire tokens.
Yeah, I lost those so often.
I mean, you're the queen of fire tokens. How many did you have at that auction? 30?
I think I had like 21, maybe 22. Yeah, I was like bequeathed tokens. So I
Mhm.
inherited being the queen of fire tokens. Yeah, no, I didn't have that many of my own throughout the game because I was always pretty good about like giving them to whoever was going to the outpost to get rewards or whatever. So yeah, I would just have them in my pocket. They would fall out in the shelter constantly. So I wasn't a big fan of fire tokens watching the show. I think it actually like playing the game, having them added a fun element, but I never had the opportunity to use them to get advantages
Mhm.
because there weren't advantages at the first outpost. So I think I was like, like I didn't care that much because I thought it was just to like buy reward. It took me forever to figure out that they were actually having like clues and stuff at the outpost because
Mhm.
that people did not tell me about.
Um, what about Shot in the Dark?
Shot in the dark. I go back and forth on it. I think it so rarely works that I would almost rather do without it. There are definitely some votes that got super overcomplicated because people were worried about shot in the dark. I would rather just throw it all on someone. And I knew that most of the time, like if somebody wasn't going home because they played their shot in the dark correctly, I wasn't going to be the person who went
Mhm.
instead. So I didn't really want to split votes that often. But I think, it adds a strategic element. So yeah, I'm really on the fence about Shot in the Dark and
Yeah.
whether I like it. It didn't work out for me. I'd maybe like it more if it did.
So your tribe wins that opening reward challenge, and you and Melissa go to the outpost along with Blake and Carl. How was this experience for you?
The outpost was well, actually, can I talk about the puzzle first?
Yes, go for it. This is when you started your reputation as a puzzle person.
Yeah. So Danny and I walk up and we see that it's a slide puzzle. I'm freaking out because I told everyone that I was good at word puzzles and kind of okay at jigsaws. Slide puzzles, no, I have historically been very bad at them when I play them in orgs, and I had never done one in like real life, like physically.
Mhm.
Only done it virtually. I think my fastest time doing one in an org was like 4 minutes. So when I saw it was a slide, I was like, oh no. Because I'm also used to like having the image, like when you do it on a computer,
You
you
know
have the
this what the
image.
solution is.
Yeah, and you have like number tiles
Mhm.
sometimes. So I was like, oh my God. But I had researched the general strategy like forever ago for an org. So I told Danny, if you can just verbally number each square for me, maybe I can try and get them where they need to go. And I didn't even know if that was going to work because like that's also confusing to just have Danny be like
Mhm.
1, 3, 4.
And this
But
is a 3x3 or 4x4.
it was a 3 by 3, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I truly blacked out. Like I don't remember doing that at all. But I think we got it done in like 10 seconds. It was incredible. I was immediately worried because I was like, oh my God, that was really fast. But then I also felt like, okay, well, there's two of us here. It's me and Danny. Tony didn't get to see us do it. The other team is focused on their own puzzle. So I was like, maybe this won't get out
Mhm.
that we this fast. But then I feel like the rest of my game was me trying to convince people I'm not good at puzzles because I don't know how I did that.
And so you go to the outposts with Melissa, Blake, and Carl.
Yes, I was excited to go to the outpost with Melissa. I had talked to Danny a little bit after the puzzle because Danny was like, I would like to work with you. And I think I had actually mentioned to Danny at that point that I was interested in voting Joe out. And Danny was like, well, Joe's an obvious vote. Like, we could keep her as a number and use her later on. And if we need to have an obvious vote later on, we could do that. So I was like, And then Danny said that Melissa really liked me, but that Melissa also maybe didn't want Joe to go. So I was interested in like feeling out
Mhm.
Melissa. And also I was very surprised when Danny said she liked me because I don't think I had thought about her much at all at that point. So I don't think we really had talked either, other than like maybe during making the fire. So yeah, I was excited to go together with her on the outpost. And then I really wanted Sandra and Blake to go because Sandra, I had rode in with her. So I was like, okay, maybe she's someone that I can like try and build a connection with. Blake, as I said, was making eyes at me, I
Mhm.
thought. So I wanted to build something with both of them, but I think I can't remember who it was, but the rest of the tribe ended up deciding to do Carl, and that was so funny and chaotic. Carl, I had talked to a little bit on the porch, and I knew he was a carpenter. He wasn't supposed to tell us that, but like Carl talks obviously a lot. Um, so I thought he was really funny. And again, like someone who I was like, I'm probably never going to work with this guy, but he's hilarious. So yeah, we show up and Carl immediately like accosts us for 2 tokens. And we're like, no, we're not doing that. I feel like Melissa and I were a good duo for this because it was very like good cop, bad cop. Like Carl asked for tokens. Melissa said no. And I was like, well, the reason we can't is because our tribe really wants a second tarp. And like, if we don't come back with this, I was like really trying to be very gentle. So I think it kind of worked out. And then, you know, I suggested giving them a token as a show of good faith. And really laid it on thick about like, oh yeah, Melissa and I chose you two, even though that was not the case at all. But I was really trying to like flatter them and be like, we really wanted to work with you specifically. So we made sure you guys were the ones to come on this outpost.
Which kind of does pay off down the road a bit.
It does. Yeah, it does pay off. I was so stressed though. Like the walk back to camp, I felt okay about it. And then I started realizing that it would mean we would have to lie. So I was freaking out. Melissa and I decided like, let's just tell the tribe that the tarp costs 9 tokens and great. That'll account for the 1 token that we gave over to the other tribe. But for some reason, when I was telling the story, I told them like Carl wanted 2 tokens so that we could tie and go to rocks for the tarp, which mathematically makes no sense because we had 10 tokens and told them the tarp cost 9. So how could we give away 2 tokens and then tie? But nobody actually questioned it. So it was fine. And, but oh my God, that night I could not sleep, not just because of the storm, but I was just like, I really felt like I had ruined my game. I spiral sometimes. So I was just like in the tent. Like I felt like my heart was just like beating so fast. And I was like, why did I do that? Like this lie is going to come out and everyone's going to know I'm a liar and then no one's going to trust me. And I was like freaking out about it. Melissa was very calm and cool about it, but I was freaking out. But I do think it brought us closer together. And I was like, at least I have somebody who I have a lie with. And like, it's kind of mutually assured destruction. And then I found out she told Tony about it. So I guess it wasn't destruction at all, but.
So how are you kind of feeling evening of that first day?
I was feeling a little kind of out of my element. The tribe was really like Melanie was doing a lot of like very deep getting to know you questions, which I thought was really cool of her on one hand. But then on the other hand, I do a lot better in smaller groups. And I really wanted to just like break off and start to talk to people.
And it's so hard to do that.
Yeah, especially at our camp. It felt very like contained and also with the mud everywhere. Like it was so much effort to just go to get from point A to point B in our camp. So there wasn't really breaking off, but like eventually I think groups started to form just around like where we were around the fire. And I think I ended up being near Ethan and Hannah for a part of the night. And we were like talking about our significant others. Like Ethan and I at some point were like laying down, like geeking out over how clear the stars were and how cool it was to be out there. So then I started to feel like, okay, I'm getting the chance to develop some connections in a more organic way for me than like answering like Melanie's 20 questions. So I started feeling a lot better. And then it started raining and that was horrible.
That first night is the kind of the hardest night of the season with that downpour you get.
Well, I'm going to say night 2 was the hardest night for me personally, but it was, I don't know, it was colder. I don't remember if it was still raining that second night, but it just felt so much colder. So yeah, that night 2 was probably the night I got the least amount of sleep actually. But yeah, I got maybe an hour of sleep during the first night. That storm was brutal. It was just so hard. I was one of the last people to go into the shelter and there just wasn't room for all of us. So like my bottom half was sticking out of the shelter and just getting rained on. So like I get totally soaked through. My poncho I like gave to Hannah, I think, to cover her lap up because I was just like trying to be nice. Like if I'm useful, they'll keep me. But then my poncho got ripped, so I didn't get to use that for kind of the rest of the game. It was pretty bad. And then, you know, I wasn't scared. I know my wife later was like, I can't believe you stayed out in that storm because there was the evacuation situation. And she was really mad that I stayed. But I just never thought I was in danger, to be honest. Like when the other tribe called and said that lightning had hit a tree, I did not believe them. I thought they were trying to psych us out. And, you know, even when production came, I think we asked them and they were like, I don't know, like they wouldn't tell us. So I never felt like, oh, we're gonna die if we stay here. Otherwise, I maybe would have left. Maybe.
So that second day, your tribe continues to have this win streak, right? You win the vertical table mage, you win the idle hand challenge. How are you feeling having won all three of those reward challenges?
I mean, I felt great. Well, that's not true. I felt really good after the vertical table maze. I was really excited because I think that's when I think Tony and Charlie went
Yes.
to the outpost. Yeah. And that day I had said, all I want is to be able to dry something because everything in my backpack got soaked. So I had no dry socks. I had nothing. So I was really excited about the dryer thing. And although I remember also, because they came back and they said there was only 3 items there. And I was like, that's weird. There were 4 when Melissa and I went, but I was so excited about the dryer. I did not even question it further. Idle hands, I think maybe the lack of sleep was catching up to me already, or I don't know, maybe I'm just an emotional person. I'm just not realizing this after Reelfoot. But I got really in my head about like, I only went up once. I went up against Shauna. We were both like staying back, trying to get the other person to move and drop on their own. But then I like went for it and I got hers off of her thing first. But in the process, I don't know if she hit mine or I dropped mine, but mine hit the ground first. So I lost the point. Got really in my head about it. I was so upset. And I think, I don't remember who I talked to afterwards because everyone was like excited, like, oh my God, we got this reward. And I was just like so down. I think it was Melanie maybe who I talked to. And I was like, I just feel really bad. I'm like beating myself up in my head. And she was kind of like, it's fine. And so I realized at that point that like normally if I'm going through like a thought spiral like that or like feeling really bad about myself, like my wife is the person who will like talk me through it. And I was like, okay, I just have to like be my own support system out here, which almost feels like it could be lonely, but it was actually very empowering for me. I was like, okay, I have to do this. I'm like, yeah, but I was excited that we got that reward and that our team seemed to be really good at like communicating. And we didn't even actually get the reward that we were supposed to get. We were supposed to go on the boat ride, which I was like, I'd rather dry an extra article of clothing, to be honest. But what was really good about winning that one was that we got separated into separate cars to go to the reward. And it was random, but I ended up with Ethan, which was like great. At that point, I was already locked in with Ethan. I was like, yes, we're going to go far together. Hannah and Tony. And Hannah, I had really been working to try and connect with. So like right before we got into the car, Ethan and I kind of had like a quick huddle and we were like, this is perfect because Ethan had gotten close to Tony. So I was like, this is a great group. Let's try and solidify something. Cause it was the first time that any of us had been able to like branch off and actually have a conversation like that. So we just like whispered about setting something up and I was like, okay, Ethan, like I'm going to let you take the lead. You talk about this. So we got to, I don't know that conversation was ultimately the best. Cause like I knew that Hannah was super cautious of a player. I had talked to her, I think earlier that day and was like, hey, like, I feel like we're very similar players. I feel like you and I could both end up in the middle. And like, it would be nice to have someone else who's also playing the middle. So that way we have a little bit more power in deciding what happens. And I think she said like, yeah, we can work together for now, which I was
like, oh, that's not selling me.
Yeah. And then she said like, and then, you know, once we get to the merge, if we end up needing to do separate things, we can. And then if one of us betrays the other, like we'll still vote for them to win at the end. So I was like, okay. So maybe we're not going to be like super close, but I still felt like she was someone who I could have like an honest conversation with and she wasn't going to like necessarily lie to me. But I was worried that Ethan went right into that conversation in the car with like, oh, like we've really wanted to work with this group of 4. And I was like, I don't think Ethan's talked to Hannah at all. So I know Hannah's going to be like, this is weird. And I hadn't really talked to Tony much at that point, but we did talk through like, I think we did pros and cons of everyone on the tribe, who we would be okay with seeing gone, who we want to work with, and like who are 2 people that we could all agree on to bring in. And at that point, everyone in the car said Melissa, which alarm bell for me. I was like, oh, she's got to go at some point. But right now I was like, we're fine, but pre-merge, she's out of here. And then I think the only other person that we agreed on was Charlie, because I think everyone kind of felt like, I think Tony was a little closer to him. And then we felt that he was like a little lost and maybe just needed to be like brought into something. So Yeah, so that was a good conversation. That was actually how the six formed. Like we had conversations during that reward with Melissa and Charlie, and we're like, hey, we'd like to work together. And then I just did damage control with Hannah later. Like I went up to her because I don't think at that point, I think Melanie knew Ethan and I were close because I was like freaking out about Ethan shivering in the shelter on night 1 or 2. But for the most part, I think we did a good job of keeping our alliance a secret. And so when I went to Hannah afterwards, I was like, that was weird, right? Like, where did that come from? That was kind of out of nowhere. But also, these two guys could be good to work with. And, we can keep that open as an option. So, yeah.
So 2 players I'd like to talk about that we've kind of talked around. Let's talk about Melanie. Why wasn't she included in that group of 6, or were people feeling sketchy about her at this point? Or just like,
yeah,
lucky?
Yeah. So Melanie, so on that first night when we had the storm, Melanie was one of the 5 who stayed overnight. It was me, Ethan, Melissa, Tony, and Melanie. And Melanie said something like, what if this was a 5? I did not really think that was actually going to happen because it was like we were there by random. Like that group was there by random. It could have been anyone there. It wasn't like a group built on like personal connections necessarily, or like, I don't know, similar strategic mindset. So I was like, that's just talk. Of course, I'm like, yeah, but I didn't really think much of it. The next day we did get up together before the rest of the tribe came back, and we searched for an idol. And I felt better about, okay, maybe this group can be a thing. But then Melanie and I were talking privately, and I think what had happened was that she said, like, she didn't want to see a woman or a POC go out first. And I was like, sure, like I can agree with that. I feel like those are the people who are like often targeted first in CBS Survivor. So I would love to break that tradition. But then when I thought about it, I really wanted Joe gone. I needed a Joe gone. Joe, I actually love Joe so much. Like she's one of the sweetest people, and she is such a hard worker. But because of that, she like wasn't connecting with the rest of the tribe. Like she was spending so much time like working on the camp that she wasn't connecting with the rest of us on a social level. And also, I think it was just hard to like get her to focus on things sometimes. So I was just like chafing a little bit. She's like such a mom too. Like she was really like trying to wrangle us in a way that I think like rubbed up against me wrong. So I was just like, for my own like peace, I would like Joe to be the first boot. And so I realized, well, that's not going to work because Melanie doesn't want a woman gone. And then if she didn't want a POC gone, that left Tony, Charlie, or Ethan as the votes. Tony, I did want to work with. Ethan, obviously, I wanted to work with. And Charlie just felt like a really boring vote at that point. I was like, he didn't seem like a big threat to me at the time. LOL, because he made
surprise.
But he did a very good job of like seeming very just like enthusiastic. He just seems sweet. Like I was like, he doesn't have the appetites. He's not out here trying to like pull anything weird or be sneaky. So I thought like, okay, that was my first hint that maybe we weren't going to be able to kind of align on a vote. And the other thing was that she was so focused on advantages. So like before every challenge, we would all talk together and be like, what if we go to the outpost? Whoever goes, what is the priority? And Ethan and I were struggling so bad at night. I mean, everyone was struggling, but Ethan and I were the ones who would like get up and be up like the whole night just working on the fire because we were so cold. With like Melissa and Hannah sometimes would like come in and out. But like I feel like Ethan and I were the 2 who were like, we need to get a comfort item of some sort. We need something that will make the nights more bearable because it was just awful. Like 30 minutes sleep here, like 45 maybe tops the whole night. You're just like praying for the sun to come up. It was the worst. That was the worst part of this for me. So we really wanted comfort items, and Melanie was like, screw sleep, screw food. All we need are advantages. How she intended it to come across. But that is how I read it. Because Ethan and I were like, can we please have comfort? And Melanie was like, no. So in my head, that was Melanie. And so I was like, okay, she's really concerned about advantages. I don't remember if she was the one who suggested we all look for an idol that morning after. But I started just feeling like, and Ethan and I talked about it, and we're like, yeah, Melanie is going to be an issue, I think, because she's just a very hard player. Like she's going to be out here for advantages. She's not going to tell us if she finds an advantage. Like we didn't feel that we had like a good enough connection with her. So that was definitely my second boot pretty early on.
And so the last player who I don't think you mentioned is German. Can you talk to me a little about him? And
Yeah. You want to know why I didn't mention German? Because German was asleep.
I mean, I figured that's what you're going to say. That's been what I've heard from the other Okina members so far. But
You know, I actually, German, so Danny had told me he wanted to work with me in German. And so I think it was right after the first challenge, I walked back with German. I think that's also when I was talking to him, trying to like connect with him, and then I like slipped on the mud and fell straight back, just like fully. And he didn't laugh at me, so I was like, okay, this is a good guy. But it was hard because we just had that one conversation, and again, like very little opportunity to branch off and like really have longer conversations with people, other than when you're walking to and from challenges. Otherwise, it looked really weird and suspicious. So I didn't get much of a chance to talk to him, and then man, that boy could sleep. He was asleep like during the day. So that, like, if he can sleep at night, more power to him. But if he was sleeping during the day, I don't know why. I was so resentful. I was just like, how dare you sleep when I'm like, my eyes like twitching because I haven't gotten any sleep. So yeah, so German, I didn't like want him to go. I definitely wanted to protect him if I could. But if he ended up being the vote at that point, I wasn't going to do anything about it because, you know, I'm not going to stick my neck out.
So over the course of that second day, you know, my understanding from talking to other people, you know, German's name kind of is out there. Hannah squashes it, and kind of Joe is just kind of this consensus that everyone's like, yeah, that's probably fine as the first boot.
Yeah, I didn't even know if German's name was like fully out there at that point. Maybe it was the second day, I'm not sure. But yeah, Joe was a clear consensus. And I felt really bad about that actually, because I had a conversation with her, and this is part of like why, like everyone knew I wanted Joe out. I was not shy about it. I told everyone, and I never wanted to drive a vote, but I was just like, she's got to go. And I told everyone that. But then I had a conversation with her, and I think she said during that conversation that like I was someone she felt close to. So then I was like, oh, well, now I feel bad. So I just encouraged, like, she was like, I don't know what to do in this game. Like, all I can do is like focus on making the camp good and like making sure everyone's taken care of. And I was like, stop that. Go talk to people. Like, go talk to everyone one-on-one. But then I think she said something. She was like, if I'm voted out, who's going to make your fire and who's going to make your rice? And that like really frustrated me. And I stopped feeling bad about voting her at that point, because the first day when she was like, I'm going to do the rice. And I really wanted to be the rice person out there. I love cooking. Well, and so okay. She started doing the rice, and then she left, and it's been like 40 minutes. And I go up to her, and she was like at our living room, which is like further down from our camp. And I was like, Joe, what's up with the rice? And she was like, I don't know. I was like, what? So then I went back, and the rice is like burning, and like, so Danny and I had to rescue it. So anyway, I just had a lot of issues with Joe. And also there was just a lot of like, she really felt like people were stealing from her. I don't know if she actually did, or if this was like part of a strategy, but she kept like accusing people of like taking things, not like one-on-one accusing, but just like more broadly saying like people are stealing from me to mess with me. She also ate these cookies. Like she had to get food for her meds, I think. And she had shared some of the cookies with us. And she was like, I'm going to save these for the people who are asleep for tomorrow. And then Ethan was like, hey, can I get one of those cookies the next day? And she was like, yeah, go look in my bag. And then it wasn't in her bag. And she was like, somebody stole the cookies. But like, she was such a bad liar. It was so clear she had just eaten the cookies. I think like a big thing at that point was just, yeah, she wasn't connecting well with people. She was also very, she kept telling me like, there's an idol here and there's idol clues and people know this and they're like talking about it. I was like, Joe, no, you're paranoid. That's not true. And she was right. I did not know that until later, but it was absolutely right. But I think the nail in the coffin was that Ethan, Tony, and I talked to Joe and told her she needed to throw out a name. And this was, I guess it was day 3 at this point. And she goes, well, if I have to throw a name out, I think we should vote out that blonde lady. And I was like, Melanie, you don't know her name? And then I realized that she didn't know my name either, even though she had just had a warning that I was like the closest person to her. So I think that was it. That was the end for her, because I think Melanie, people didn't want Melanie gone other than maybe me and Ethan at that point. So yeah, I think the 6, I don't know if we actually got together as a 6 at that point. We might have, but someone suggested splitting on Danny, which was very silly to me because again, Joe, bad liar. I knew she didn't have an idol. I had talked to her about idols enough, and she was like still looking for them. And like I could have seen through it if she had had an idol and lied about it. So I didn't want to split on Danny, but it is what it is.
Should Survivor give people name tags to wear? Yes or no?
Should they give people what?
Name tags.
Name tags? Yeah, maybe actually. Yeah. Because even when I was at the point when I was like, I know everyone's names, but you're just so like frazzled that you get people's names so easily. I'm sure, I can't wait to hear how people struggled with my name, because I'm sure that was hard.
So you have your first individual immunity challenge. You're going to do kayak out and solve a puzzle. Your tribe wins. You've now won 4 challenges in a row. How are you feeling night 2?
Oh, yeah, I felt really good. That challenge was really, really fun. I love kayaking. I really wanted to do the puzzle, but Melanie, I think, had said that she thought it was a different kind of puzzle. Like everyone had these Vexel puzzles. I didn't even know what Vexel was. So everyone, I feel like, do you not know it? Okay, so it's like you can buy like the Survivor puzzles online.
Okay.
So a lot of people were like, yeah, I have this one at home. And I was like, okay, well, I have not practiced any Survivor puzzles at home. So if it's a Survivor puzzle, somebody else can take it. But I wish I had done it, because I saw it and I was like, oh, that's Sudoku. Like I could do that. But no, it felt really good to have won that. And just, yeah, the vibes at camp were pretty immaculate for the most part. So yeah, we were feeling really good.
Melissa is owning up that she messed up your name many times.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of the interesting slip-ups of your name?
No, because they were never to my face. Like, I think for the most part, people were messing up names in confessionals, other than when I told Ethan to his face that he was ready to go home. So yeah, no, I didn't hear any mispronunciations.
There's a guy in my season whose name was Jaira, and that name just killed me. It took me 5 days to get it down. I had this whole mnemonic I had to go through to get to his name. I'm like, I should know it. It's this, then Jaira. Oh, it was bad.
Yeah, it's hard. I remember, I think like Kiri was a big one, especially because I didn't start off on a tribe with her. It wasn't until maybe Maddie said it's like Kiwi with an R. And I was like, okay, got it. Like I just needed that for everything.
So at end of night 2, no one's going to be first out of your tribe. Can you rank the members of your tribe from most to least important to your game?
Yeah, end of night 2. So Joe's at the bottom.
Can you go bottom up?
Yeah, I'm gonna go bottom up. Joe's at the bottom. German's above Joe. Melanie's above German. Danny's above Melanie. Tony's above Danny. Hannah's above Tony. No, wait. Melissa's above Tony. Hannah's above Melissa. And then Ethan is at the top.
Where's Charlie?
Oh my God. Okay. Charlie's above Melanie and below Danny. I don't know where that puts him. He's probably around like 7 for me.
Yeah, that would put him in 7 or 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So the next morning, Debbie's voted out from the Nankana tribe. You have that silent relay where you have to carry a person in a stretcher, and at certain points, people playing charades. It doesn't go well for your tribe. Where were you in this challenge?
I was at the puzzles, and we didn't have to do it because our tribe did not make it to that point. I really wanted to be on charades. So at this point, again, like Danny and I were put on the puzzle. I didn't know what the puzzle was going to be, but we could kind of see some of the pieces like along the path that would have to be picked up. And I could tell it was some sort of like geographic shape situation, which I did not feel confident on. So I think I asked to be on charades once we got, because they were kind of explaining it like portion by portion. So once we got to the charades portion, I was like, oh, I want to do this. I was very confident about it. I love charades. I love words. I love word games. I know all the like hand phrases and like symbols. So I was like, I can do this, but nobody wanted to be on the puzzle. I was like, because Tony was like, I don't want to do charades. Like I've never seen fear in Tony's eyes. Like
until he was forced to do charades.
Yes. Like he was just like, I can't do charades. But I was like, well, do you want to be on the puzzle? I think the issue was that there was like a lot of running and I am not a runner. So, I think we made probably the wrong choice there, but it's hard to like. I think we made the decision we thought was best in the moment. I did try to give Tony and Charlie tips beforehand, which maybe made it worse. I don't know. I was like, okay, so just like this means small word, and like this is the syllables, and like I was doing all this. Maybe I confused them more. Although I acted out dig down because I was like, remember, it's going to be a survivor phrase. So I was like, so if it's dig down, it would be like this. And then that was part of the phrase. And they didn't get it for a long time. So yeah, that was tough. But Danny and I, like, we got to hang out at the puzzle for a bit. And that like really kind of cemented me wanting to work with Danny like more closely. Because we were just like at that point, it was just a long period of time waiting for our tribes, really waiting, that we got to just like have fun and like vibe. And like we found out that we both spoke French. So we were like strategizing for the puzzle in French so that they hear us. And so we were just having a fun time. We tried to bait the mute non-Kana members. It was Carl and James who couldn't talk, and they still couldn't talk even after that portion was finished. So I started, I knew they were very proud of the lightning that hit their tree. So I was like, yeah, did lightning actually hit your tree or is that a lie? And James immediately was like, yeah. And like he did speak. But I think Danny was like, oh, tell production, they broke the rules. But it was going to be our word versus theirs because we didn't have like, no one was filming at that point in front of us. So I was like, just forget it. But I think that actually would have been their disqualifying speech because I think they got like 3 mess ups and I think they had already messed up. Maybe it was only 2 times. I don't know. But yeah, I didn't get to do that puzzle, but I had a good time anyway.
Jeff from the non-Kana tribe and Hannah from your tribe go to the outpost. Hannah comes back with the mutiny advantage. She discloses that to her tribe?
She does. She sits us down at our living room log and she announced to the tribe that she got the mutiny. She said, this is a tribe mutiny, which like you have to say. So yeah, sure. But afterwards, she pulled me aside and she said, if we end up in a situation where we swap and you are in danger, I'm going to give this to you. I was like, wow, okay, maybe me and Hannah are good. Come to find out, she said that to Melissa and definitely meant it with Melissa and not me. But at that point, I was like, I'm doing great. Like me and Hannah are good. So yeah, I wasn't concerned that she had that, and I felt like it was a good step in our relationship as an alliance, potential alliance, that she was willing to give it to me if I needed it.
How was the scramble for the Joe vote?
Wasn't much of a scramble. I mean, the having to split on Danny was probably the biggest scramble, but yeah, I don't think much happened. The one thing that did happen actually that was so frustrating for me, and maybe turned me a little bit off of Melissa, who at that point I was otherwise good with, was that so we're splitting on Danny because people are worried Joe has an idol, and we did meet as a 6. I think that's also maybe when we got named. I think Charlie came up with the name the Sexy 6, and I don't think any of us ever used that in game. But we were like, okay, we have the split, and we don't need to tell anyone about it. And then Melanie asked me about it later, and she's not in the 6. So when she was like, oh, are we splitting? I was like playing dumb. I was like, splitting? Huh? What? And then she was like, well, Melissa says you knew about it, which like more power to Melanie for just straight up telling me like, I know you're lying. But I was so annoyed at Melissa. It was so awkward. And then I was like, oh yeah, maybe I do know about the splits. And then I went to Melissa and I was like, hey, I thought we weren't telling anyone other than the 6 what we were doing. And now I look like a liar in front of Melanie. And she was like, it's no big deal. And like, I just told her. So I was so annoyed at Melissa for that. And then I was like, well, now Melanie really has to go because like, I could tell she was like, whoa, Trinica is lying to me like that. I didn't think that we were going to actually repair things, even though it's such a minor thing to lie about. It's not like I was targeting Melanie, to her knowledge. But yeah, I was just like, well, I'm exposed as a liar. So Melanie has to go. And that's Melissa's fault. Sorry, Melanie, RIP. But Melissa made me look bad.
So Joe goes out. It is a 6-3-1. Your next challenge is the Steal a Bacon challenge, which we would be remiss if we didn't talk about your match versus Jordan.
Yes. Honestly, both of my matches. Shauna was also like such a force. Yeah, running's not my forte. I have like bone issues in my feet that make it like pretty painful to like
Mhm.
run. I remember Tony and Ethan asked me like, because I was panicking. I was like, guys, I'm not going to be good at this. I knew we were going to lose that challenge. I was such a naysayer. Tony and Ethan were like such motivators on our tribe. They were like, you've got this. Like, who do you think you can go up against? Who do you think you could beat? I was like, okay, maybe Jordan. My strategy, outrun her. It definitely got super physical. We kickstarted that turning into a wrestling match. I didn't score a point, but I was really proud of myself for just like holding out against someone as strong as Jordan. And like I remember at one point, like I think her tribe was telling her like, oh, just like drag her, like kick her off or whatever. And she was like, yo, she's strong. And Melanie was like shouting about how strong I was. And I don't think that like I would have ever self-described myself as a strong person, like physically strong person before that moment. So that was like a real confidence like booster for me, and like definitely a memory I treasure from Reelfoot for sure. And I found out later that Jordan's like a power lifter. So that made me feel even better. I was like, okay, I held out. I didn't lose us a point. And yeah, I knew it was easy for people to like look at me and underestimate me, but that challenge made me realize how often I also underestimate myself. So that was super cool. And then I ended up asking to go again because our guys were like very evenly matched and they seemed wiped. So, and we were close to losing. So I was like, okay, I don't know if this even made sense as a strategy, but I was like, if I go again, like their girls seem very tired too. So if I go again, I'll probably be put up against Jordan, and like this time for real, I'm going to outrun her. But then they put me up against Shauna. So I was like, okay, well, Shauna, I'm going to let her run to the ball, waste her energy, and then I'll just grab her and drag her to the mat. I ended up fully tackling her. I like slammed my nose on the ground. I thought I broke it. Like I think at one point I'm just like going like this because I was like, oh my God, that was so hard. And she was feisty as hell. Like I underestimated her. It was easy. Like I could get her off of me, but I couldn't shake her. Like she would just come right back on top. So yeah, definitely left that challenge feeling super proud of myself. But I was also like worried about the perception of me. Like I was just thinking like, what is Pink thinking about me? Because I remember at one point during the Jordan match, I didn't know what to do because I was like, I can't get her off of me. I can't like grab the ball from her if I'm on top of her. So I just like took off her glasses and threw them and like pulled off her shoe and threw that. Because I was like, I don't know. And then
You're
I
gonna
just
Sandra Diaz twine this. You're gonna like taking
Yes, and then I heard Sandra from Nankana saying something like, "Oh, she's playing dirty. That's not cool." But I was like, "We're playing a game about deception out in the dirt. Who's playing clean? Come on!" But I was worried that, I was worried about the perception I might be getting at that point.
So this next tribal council is one where Danny goes home, and it's very straightforward because Danny comes out early and tells the tribe, "Hey, I need you all to vote for me."
Yeah, that was really rough. Danny, he actually came up to me right after the challenge and was like, "I need to talk." Like he said, "I have something to say to you, and you're not gonna like it." And I immediately was like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. I knew about the split. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I should have. I'm sorry I didn't talk." And he was like, No. And he said like, I think he said that he felt like he was holding the tribe back and wanted to be voted out for that reason. And I got really emotional, which kind of surprised me because again, like I was pretty locked in with Ethan as my number one at that point, Hannah as my number two. Danny was a lot lower down for me just because we hadn't like had as much of a chance to talk like strategy. But yeah, I got really emotional. And then I went full like Olivia Pope scandal. Like, I'm fixing this. You are not leaving me here to be the only person that they put on puzzles. No. And I left. I was like, I literally was like, I'm going to go talk to people. I'm going to fix this. Like, you're not going home. And I didn't even give him a chance to like fully explain why he wanted to go home because I just assumed, I thought it was like post challenge. Like he felt he didn't do well in the challenge. So he wanted to go. And I was like, no, we're not doing that self-sacrifice bullshit. Not on my watch. So I went back to camp and just immediately went into like panic mode. I was like, okay, grab Ethan, Hannah, Charlie, Melissa, like in one-on-ones. I'm like, we need to vote Melanie. And I think it was either Melissa or maybe Charlie who's like, you're going to have trouble convincing Tony, which was kind of news to me because I don't think I had realized at that point. I had seen them having like, I knew that they had like some shared life experiences and had like some in-depth conversations on night one, but I didn't really know that they were that close. it became like a debate team, like Tony hardcore campaigning for Melanie. I was like, okay, Tony can talk. Like that was when alarm bells again. He's got to go pre-merge too, because
You're looking at my entire tribe. They all need to go pre-merge. All of them.
all gotta go. All of them. Just leave me here. No, he had his arguments ready. That's like top of my list to get out, Melissa. Right under that, Tony. And like I wanted to work with them until they had to leave, but I was just like, ooh, like if you're on my level socially or strategically, like you gotta go. And at that point, I was ready to throw my whole alliance away to save Danny. Like I was like, I'm gonna work with Hannah and German. I'm gonna pull Ethan. We're gonna vote out Melanie. But then finally, Danny, like I think I went to do a confessional. And then when I came back, everyone was hugging Danny and like crying. And I was like, what happened? And then, yeah, Danny said that their health was an issue. So they had to go. And it was such a sad moment. I remember he hugged me and he was like, you can have my socks. And also like, you're going to win this. You better win this. I was just crying. Like, but I was really grateful for those socks because at that point did not have dry socks. So you're a real one for that, Danny. Thank you so much for those socks that I burned on the fire.
He also votes for you.
Yes, yeah. He asked on the way to tribal, he was like, I don't know if I should like make like a statement vote or just vote for you. I was like, vote for me. That's an honor and a privilege for like the only vote before my eventual vote out to be from Danny. Absolutely.
One of your 8 votes you received this season.
Yes.
So it's an 8-1 vote. Danny goes home. How do you like some gross food?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, when we did our skill share before, like on day 1, that was the one thing that I was like confident in. I was like, I'll eat anything. I don't even know why I was confident. Actually, I do. It's because when I was in school, I would charge $2 in elementary school to let kids combine anything they wanted from our lunch, and I would eat it. Until that got shut down by the teachers. But it's because I would eat things and then my friend would watch me eat them and then go throw up. And the teachers were like, why does Natalia throw up at every lunch? And then they figured out it's because I was eating gross shit. But no, I was ready for this. My dad's Caribbean and a bad cook. So I have eaten some weird shit in my life.
You were made for this challenge.
Yeah, I was born for this. I wasn't hungry at that point. But I could tell, like my body kind of shut down the hunger cues pretty early, I think. But I could really tell that I was like weak, like my body was shutting down in general. Like I would get winded. So maybe that was more the sleep than the food. Honestly, I don't know. But I was just like, yeah, I would get super winded more easily, more clumsy than normal. Fell down to the mud like 3 separate times. Brain not functioning. So I was just eager to get some protein.
What was your favorite round?
Oh God, the baby food, the rice flavored baby cereal. Oh my God, that was delicious. I actually Googled it when I got home to see if I could like get some. And then I was like, Trinica, you're being weird. Don't eat baby food. That's so weird. But oh my God, it was delicious. It tasted like cold cream of wheat. And I ate a lot of cream of wheat growing up. So that was absolutely no problem. I was like grabbing from other people's plates because I was like, which I shouldn't have done. Like, I wish I hadn't. Because I got so full off of it. It was really dense. So the fact that I was like eating from other people's unfinished plates, then when I was like, oh, I have to do several rounds of this. And then the next thing was like the tofu and it was so dense. I was like, oh, why did I eat so much baby food?
How was the 1,000-year egg?
You know, the outer layer was really good, actually. It was like salty, a little tangy. I think the issue was like the worms. I couldn't swallow.
There were worms in it?
No. Sorry, but the worms.
Oh, the previous round.
Yeah. So the worms, I couldn't swallow them whole because my throat was so dry. And I thought chewing them was going to be like worse. Just chewing something alive, like mentally, I thought that was going to be bad. But like I didn't even think about it. I just chewed them down. But the aftertaste for those worms was like truly awful. It was so bitter. So then I think I just had that whole taste like overwhelming my mouth when I got the century egg. So by the time I bit into the yolk of the century egg, that was really hard. I could see like in small doses how that would be tasty, but as an earthworm chaser, no, that was disgusting. And then I tried to like fake gag to like psych out German, but then I made myself actually gag. So like that backfired on me. I don't know. And then Carl later was like, you should have just swallowed it like I did. I'm a gold star lesbian. I cannot deep throat. It's not happening. My throat was too dry, but I got it down, won immunity. So, and I didn't think I was going to win an individual immunity out there. So that was like really cool and a big bucket list item for sure.
That might be the quote of the podcast season.
It's true.
So you win immunity. You are not going home, but both tribes are going to the tribal council. This is, I think, the vote of the original Aquino tribe, because on one hand you have the six, and then you have German and Melanie, and everyone's fighting for what side alliance do they get to keep. Talking about this Cold War.
Oh man, yeah, that was interesting. Like, so that morning, I think it was that morning, Ethan and I had taken a nap because, again, we had been up all night working on the fire, and we were like, okay, we can nap. Like, I think we asked people, is it okay if we nap even? But nobody had been like strategizing that much. So go to sleep, wake up, vibe, totally different. I think when I woke up, I looked out because I was like, where is everyone? Everyone's split up in like these groups of 2 and 3. And then most notably, Hannah came to me and was like, German's like, I talked to German. I had a really good talk with him. And like, I told him to talk to people, and he's really talking to people. German was like alive. It felt like I went to sleep and woke up and someone had body snatched him. He was talking to everybody. I was like, who is this man? And what has he done with German? Sleepy boy German. But I really wanted Melanie out. Again, had that weird interaction where I'd lied to her. And I didn't like how strongly Tony was defending her, because the ally of my ally is my enemy. So I wanted Melanie out to potentially get closer to Tony. And then German, I was also concerned about German because, again, Hannah was now suddenly close to him. And I was like, that came out of nowhere. So I wanted Melanie out more, but I wasn't going to really campaign super hard for it. Since I was immune, I started working on the fire and the rice, and the rest of the Sexy Six, they were all talking at the living room, which is in clear view of the fire. It looked so suspicious. So it's just like me, Melanie, and German at the fire while I'm making the rice. And then you just see like 5 of them off talking. And I was like, what are they doing? So, I mean, I knew what they were doing, but I was like, why are you doing this in front of everyone? Like, do this in smaller groups and then come together later. So I went over to them, debate team part 2, Melanie versus German, Tony versus Hannah. So I was like, listen, I think I spent like 15 seconds there. I was like, I don't really care who's going home. This looks very suspicious. I'm going to go back to the fire. Let me know what we're doing. And I think there's an issue because Tony felt like Hannah was being really rigid about the vote and just saying like, I won't vote German, which is kind of like the impression I got from her. But Hannah, I told her about that. I was like, Tony's kind of upset, like, because you seemed rigid. And she was like, well, I told Tony that I was open to talking about it and like figuring something out. So that's not even true. And so they were like really at odds for that. And then I went back to the fire, and Melanie and German were like, And I was like, oh, I don't know what they're talking about over there. They kind of stopped talking when I showed up, like trying to act like I wasn't in on it. And Melanie was like, yeah, that's clearly an alliance. And they're trying to decide who between me and German is going home. And I was like, oh, yeah, an alliance. And we're not part of it. That sucks. And then like night falls, and we only had a couple flashlights. So people were just like walking off into pairs, wandering off into the night, turning their flashlights off. And I'm just stuck at the fire because I didn't have a flashlight. And it was like muddy and treacherous. So I didn't even feel like I could go like try and find pairs. So I was just there in the ocean after the Titanic sunk, just like, please, somebody come get me, please. I'll just be floating on this door over here. But I think eventually people came back to the fire and collected me. So I was able to talk to people. And being safe that round and not really caring who went home, I was really just planting seeds for the future. So I told Hannah and German, I think maybe Melissa too, which was probably a mistake, but I think I told them that I was worried about a potential alliance between Tony, Charlie, and Ethan, just laying some groundwork because I was like, maybe Tony needs to go. And then Melanie and I talked, and she gave me a lot of information about like other players in the game. So again, similar to the Joe vote, I was like, gosh. Well, and I talked to her about the like faux pas with the split vote situation, and we talked that out. And so I felt better with her. So then I talked to German. I felt better with him. So it was hard, but I think like the most interesting talk that night was with Charlie, who I had never had a strategy chat with, and he like fascinated me because yeah, in my eyes he was like probably really strategic but like unpredictable. I just couldn't read him well. And so we talked about, he was like, do you realize that you and I are the swing vote here? And I was like, what do you mean? And I think he wanted to go for German at that point because he said that Melanie told him that German had threw his name out. And I'm curious if that's true. I'm curious to hear from German and Hannah on that one. But I told him Melanie's clearly lying. Look at her. She's such a like shit stirrer. I was like, she's just trying to save herself. So I think I had gotten Charlie onto Melanie if he wasn't already on Melanie. And then that night, also Ethan and I talked, and he told me about his relationship with Maddie P. And he was like, me and Maddie are besties, and like, you need to work with him if we swap. And like, that felt like a pretty major development in our alliance because he hadn't told anyone else. So, yeah. So even though I didn't really care how that vote went, I feel like I was like developing relationships a lot that night, which was really important. And I think we didn't land on the split until the next morning, and I was supposed to vote for German, which I didn't feel good about. But, you know, Melissa and Tony had clearly decided that Melanie was staying. And then Charlie came to me when we were going to tribal, and he was like, what can we do to make German stay? And I think I just said like nothing because I was like, stop, don't scramble, nothing. I didn't want to risk upsetting Melissa and Tony and sticking my neck out for German when I had just started talking to him, especially when, you know, if I pushed too hard, I could see them turning on me instead if I would try to go after their ally. So, yeah, so I went into tribal like, all right, I'm voting German.
And so what did you think the vote would be? Like vote total?
I think we had decided on a 4-2 split, maybe. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that was what it was. But then German snatched that scroll up so fast. And I was like, hallelujah, because I really wanted Melanie gone. If I had the choice, I would have wanted her gone. So that was like the survivor gods had handed me a beautiful gift because it freaked everyone out. Melissa started plotting to actually just like 3-3 tie the vote, or not 3-3. How many people are on our tribe?
3-3, there's 8, right?
Yeah.
So you 3-3 and let Melanie and German vote wherever.
Exactly. So Melissa's like, let's just like perfectly tie it. And so I asked, I was like, well, if we get to choose, I want to vote Melanie because I'd rather see Melanie go. And then I knew like my plan was if this ties, I was supposed to, Melissa's verdict was like, if it ties, switch to German and German will go. But I was going to keep my vote on Melanie on the revote instead of voting German. And I knew Charlie and Hannah would do the same. And then I thought I could pull Ethan and then just like dig myself out of the hole socially. So my plan was always to flip it and get Melanie out. But then Charlie flipped it, which is even better because I didn't have to get my hands dirty. I immediately knew it was on purpose. He's such a bad liar. We left tribal and I went right up to him and was like, did you do that on purpose? And he was like, no, oh my God, I feel so bad. And I was like, listen, I honestly don't care if it was on purpose or not. That's what I wanted to happen. Great job. And I was just really excited to be able to work with Charlie and Hannah and German while still being able now to maintain my like alliance with Ethan, my main alliance with Ethan, and still being good with Melissa and Tony because I hadn't been the one to mess up the vote. So I think I went to them too. And I was like, Charlie's lying probably. And this was before I had talked to Charlie, maybe, I don't remember, but I was like, I'm pretty sure that was on purpose. And they were like, no way, there's no way. So I was like, okay. And then, yeah, we go back to camp and German starts accusing everyone. I was like, who is this man? I really had no idea he was going to be so like such an aggressive player, like diving for advantages and like accusing like who voted for me. It was very entertaining personally as someone who didn't vote for German. And I think he said like, because he got the idol clue at that point. And so he was like, this is for the tribe and I'm going to use it for us. I'm going to find it. I'm going to use it for us. So as soon as he like ends his speech and everyone starts like walking away, I went up to him and I was like, do not tell anyone when you find that. Like, don't tell anyone. What are you doing? Because that's like my biggest pet peeve in Survivor is when people needlessly tell people that they have advantages. So I was like, you find it and you don't tell anyone. And I think he asked me to like help him look for it. And then I said no, that it would like look too suspicious. But I was like, I can get everyone to go to the living room because he knew the general area. So I was like, I'll get everyone to go over there and then you can go look like while we're occupied. But But then I think I talked to Ethan, and Ethan was like, we can't have him find that idol. Like, can you watch him while he searches? So then I was like, okay, I'm on babysitting duty now, which happened to me a lot in this game when it came to idols. So I told Ethan, like, how, or not Ethan, German, how it had gone down. And like, I told him I didn't vote for you. And I told him I was going to flip the vote so that you didn't go home. So I think like he trusted me a little bit more. He shared the clue with me. And so the six, or I guess I should say Melissa, Tony, and Ethan thought that I was helping them by watching out for German and trying to find the idol before him. But I was actually just helping German, trying to solidify something with him. So yeah, and then it became a mad dash. Everyone just started absolutely chasing German around. Everyone was looking for the idol. I mean, Melissa and maybe Tony came up to me and they were like, did he share the clue with you? And I was like, yeah, but only part of it. And then I think it said like that it was going to be under a log, but I told them it was going to be under a rock. But I think they might have already had a similar clue at that point. So it probably didn't even matter. But I was trying as hard as I could to make sure German could find that idol.
Mm-hmm. Had this original Akina tribe gone to tribal council again, what would have happened?
Yeah, there's a lot of debate about this. I say that Tony would have gone. Maybe it wouldn't have been Tony. Maybe Melissa. I don't know. But I was going to pull Ethan and work with German, Hannah, and potentially Charlie. I think Charlie was probably close to Tony at that point. So I don't think he would have wanted Tony to go. But I maybe could have gotten him to go for Melissa. And so that might have been the vote.
Well, we'll never know because you swap and you get to stay on Okina. You, along with your idol Ethan, Melissa, your best frenemy, and then you get Carl, Jordan, Maddie P, and Jeff. What's your thought?
Yes.
What's your thought looking at this new tribe?
Best frenemy is such a good description of Melissa. Love her. love to try and get her out. So right post swap, I just want to say that Hannah, like, I was like, this is bad for me. Obviously, I'm in a minority.
Yeah.
So I go to Hannah and I was like, are you going to mutiny? Are you going to use the mutiny? And she just kind of like shrugged at me. And I was like, what? That's weird. Like, of course she would want to come over here and be with me and Melissa because I thought that like we were her closest allies.
Mm-hmm.
She just like shook her head. And then Melissa came to me and was like, German shared the idol clue with me. I was like, what? Because like my one thing was like, at least I'm going back to my camp and I can find this idol because I'm the only one here who now has the clue. Mm-hmm. And then I find out that he told the person who tried to vote him out the previous round what the clue was. So I was like, German, what? Anyway. I wasn't too worried initially. I remember doing my confessional and I was very positive. Like I was like, I know Ethan and Maddie have a good relationship and I'm good with Ethan. Jeff, I wrote in with, I felt like, we had good vibes. Mm-hmm. So I mean, we obviously couldn't talk about the game, but I was like, maybe I can have some goodwill from that car ride. Jordan, we had talked a little bit while we wrestled, like a very little bit, but I did know that she was an Austinite also. So I was like, mm-hmm. Okay, that's a connection. And then Carl I had given the fire token to at that first Outlook exactly for a situation like this. So at that point, I felt pretty confident that between the OG Okina that we could flip someone. But ultimately the swap ruined my life. So that didn't happen. Well, I mean, we did flip someone, right? But,
I mean, in terms of, you only go to 2 of the 5 tribal councils in the swap. So, like, it's not the worst swap I've ever heard of. It just has large ramifications for how the rest of the game plays out. Beyond that.
Yes, exactly.
You have a blindfold challenge. You lose said blindfold challenge. You're talk about the scramble to figure out who's slipping or who's going out at this next tribal council.
Yeah. God, that puzzle was a bust. And also, I really thought that Carl was going to, I don't know why, in my head, I was like, okay, that was the one where we had to do the cube, right?
Yep.
I was like, okay, he's a carpenter. Carpenters work with wood. These blocks are made of wood. Like,
he should look at the grains of the wood and put them all back together.
Yes. And Carl would be like, oh. And then he would like take everything apart. And I was like, he's cooking. He's got this. And then it would be completely wrong. And I think like there was too many cooks in the kitchen. I think Melissa and I could have like muscled our way through that. But no, yeah, it was a big scramble. So Melissa this might have been before the challenge and not right after. I don't remember when she found the idol, but she went looking for it immediately when we swapped and got back to camp. And Ethan, in front of OG Nankana, says, like, she's looking for an idol. Trinica, can you go keep an eye on her? And I was like, Ethan, why are you airing our dirty laundry in front of the Pink tribe? Like, what? So I had to go like pretend I had to pee and just hang out with Melissa while she was looking. But yeah, so I think that my confidence dwindled pretty quickly because I had a good conversation with Ethan and Maddie. And also, I think maybe Maddie alone, where he was like, you know, Ethan says that you guys are good. But he said that Jeff wanted to vote out challenge liabilities. And I was like, okay, well, Jeff's not going to vote out a Pink. And I think people look at Melissa and Ethan and think they're challenge threats. So that leaves me as the liability, even though I wouldn't consider myself a liability. But I was like, ooh. And then Maddie also said that OG Nankana was like really tight. So I got the sense that he wasn't going to flip right off the bat. So I was like, that's not good. And from that conversation, I walked back to shelter, and Jordan, Jeff, and maybe Carl were in the shelter talking. And we had like put up some leaves on the side of our shelter. So I was on the other side of the leaves, so they couldn't see me. And I overheard them saying my name. And I was like, oh no. So I knew I was a target. I started like frantically trying to convince everyone that I wasn't good at puzzles, which I don't know why that was my strategy. I think I was just thinking in my head because I think maybe Jordan had told me like, yeah, Pink had talked about like you being this big threat, or like she might have been the one who told me that they were calling me triple threat Trinica. And I was like, I'm not a triple threat.
That's a good moniker.
It is if it's accurate. Like I was like, I can't do puzzles that well. Please, no. And I knew I couldn't count on Maddie because he didn't really talk to me much that round. And I think actually Maddie, from listening to his interview, I think he probably was maybe sticking up for me on that round, but he didn't talk to me other than about Ethan. So we hadn't like, I think now he just assumed we were good because we were both team Ethan. But in my head, I was like, he hasn't put in any work to build trust, so he's not working with me. So I was like, I have to work on Carl and Jordan. So my plan was to go the sympathy route with Carl because he seemed like he'd have the biggest bleeding heart. But then he like, I don't know. I was like playing up being emotional, and I was like, I don't want to leave before merge. And he was very sympathetic, but he was also saying like, I have a really good relationship with Pink and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, shit, I'm screwed. Like he didn't commit to anything. So then I was like, gotta find the idol. Cause yeah, Melissa hadn't found it at that point, or had, and I didn't know about it. So I told Carl, I like mustered up tears and was like, I just need some time alone. And so I just sat on a log and I was just like not moving my head, just like, where's this idol? Like finding all these spots that it could be. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna like, I have the clue. Gonna find this as soon as I get a chance. But Ethan and Jeff were talking behind me. So I was like, I have to wait till they leave. But then because I was just like hunched over like this, they like came up to me and they were like, are you okay? And I was like, oh my God. And then like, even though I was kind of faking being emotional at first, there's something about like someone asking you if you're okay, like waterworks. I just started crying so hard. And like, good, my plan was to look pathetic, and I definitely did. But it was also very embarrassing. But Ethan was like a sweetheart, and Jeff was there. It's kind of awkwardly like.
Oh, poor Jeff.
Jeff and I hadn't talked at all. Like I knew he was gonna vote me out. So I was like, yeah, I don't even know why you're here. But they found a tick, and so we left. So I didn't have a chance to talk to look for the idol. And then I went to Jordan, like last ditch, like please, like begging. I was begging like Banu. I was practically on my knees. And she was the most like forthcoming with me. And she seemed the most willing to hear me out. And I did tell her, like, if you save me right now, I will be absolutely indebted to you. I will literally do anything you tell me. I'll be your loyal little soldier. And eventually she was like, I'm not making any promises, and I can't tell you any information whatsoever, but you just have to trust and do what I tell you, which is like, you know, it was hard going from feeling like I had a lot of power on OG Okina to like, helpless. Like I'm just being told like, you have to do what I tell you and I'll give you no info. But it was a lifeline. So I was grasping it. And then I think it was a scramble. Melissa came and was like, I found the idol. And the first thing I did was ask her if she had told Ethan. I was praying that she had not told Ethan, but she had. And I was like, God, because if Ethan knows, then Maddie knows. That's like a nightmare scenario for me, because if Pink thinks that Melissa has an idol, they're just going to vote me. So I was like, And I think part of like, I was not unhappy that Melissa was on my tribe at that point. I did want to work with her, but I think Jordan just said like Melissa's a fierce player or something like that. But in my head, I was like, I don't know what happened. Melissa and I've talked about this a lot because I had the impression from someone, I thought it was Jordan, that Melissa had like betrayed a close ally in a previous game. So I started getting really scared of Melissa. I already knew she was a social threat, but I was also like, oh, she's talking a big game about wanting to work with me and like, I'll play this idol on you if we need to. But I was like, is she just lying to me?
Mm-hmm.
I was really afraid of her cutting me before I could cut her. And I didn't realize at the time how loyal she was. I really had no idea. And I wish we had a conversation at that point about like going to the end together because I would have put more faith. But at that point, I was like, better her than me. If Melissa's the vote, then I'm going to vote Melissa. But then Carl said he was going to flip. I know, Melissa, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. But also, I felt like I had no choice at that point because I was like, it's me or her. And I didn't know what they were going to do with their votes necessarily. Like Jordan was like, vote Melissa. But I was like, what if she's just lying to me? There's a lot of paranoia. And then Jeff gets in this like big tizzy on the way to tribal and pulls Jordan. And then I think I tried to go up and talk to them and they were like, go away, basically. So I was like, oh God, like it's me. And then Jordan came up to me and was like, did you tell Melissa anything I told you? And I was like, no, I didn't. And then she said that Jeff was going to like play some sort of advantage. So then I'm freaking out. Jeff's brushing me off. And then like before we went into tribal, I tried to tap Jordan on the shoulder and she didn't turn around. And I tapped her like 3 more times and she still didn't turn around. So I was like, oh, they're voting me out. And then later she said she just didn't feel it. But I was like, they're icing me out and I'm going home. As I go into tribal, I'm like desperately looking for advantages anywhere I can. And Carl's tribal answer was like so diplomatic in a way that I didn't think Carl was capable of if he was lying. So I was like, he's not flipping. This is all a lie. I'm like fully tuned out. I rewatched that tribal. I'm just like staring up at the sky, like working all these scenarios out in my head. Like if Jeff plays his shot in the dark, if Jeff plays an idol, if Melissa plays her idol, Carl flips, if Carl doesn't flip, if this was all like an elaborate ploy to get Okina to split votes. So I'm just like counting on my fingers, trying to figure out these different configurations based on like potential advantages played and who might be lying. And I didn't even know what I was going to do when I walked up to the booth. I asked Pete how long I was allowed to stay there and think about it before voting because I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But my final thought was just like, if Ethan knows Melissa has an idol, then Maddie knows Melissa has an idol. And if Pink knows Melissa has an idol, why would they not throw a couple of votes onto me? And then, if Melissa plays her idol, I go home, unless I try to stack as many votes onto Jeff as possible, because he was the only person who, like, the 2 people whose votes the 3 people whose votes I was certain about was Ethan's vote for Melissa, Melissa's vote for Jeff, and my vote for Jeff if I vote Jeff. So I threw my vote onto Jeff thinking, if Carl doesn't flip, but Jeff plays his shot in the dark and Carl and Jordan vote for me and Ethan's vote is on Melissa, and it'd be like a 2-2-1 split tied on me and Jeff. And then on the revote, I could like convince Carl and then have Ethan and Melissa. I was doing like complex mathematics, not that complex, but in my head, I was like that meme of the woman who's like doing all these like, oh my God, 4D chess. And the opponent was my own paranoia. So, but I mean, it worked out. Jeff went home.
A couple questions.
Yeah.
Let's say Melissa never finds the idol. Do you vote for her?
Oh, don't ask me that. If Melissa doesn't find the idol, well, I mean, I would have kept looking for the idol. But yeah, I mean, at that point, I thought it was me or her. So if there was no idol at play, I would have voted for Melissa. I mean, I really didn't think Carl was flipping. And then because of Jeff being like having this like unknown advantage he was going to play, yeah, I would have voted for Melissa.
And so it wasn't even like Melissa's a big threat at that point. It's just like, this is self-preservation mode. If it's either me or Melissa, I'm voting Melissa. That's what I would do.
I didn't want Melissa gone at that point. Like I wanted Green to stay strong. I mean, especially with like, I could see Ethan and Jeff talking, and obviously Ethan already had Maddie. And I was just like, Ethan seems very cozy with Jeff right now. And, once I found out that Ethan and Maddie were best friends, I was like, this is not good for me. Ethan's going to save Maddie over me. Absolutely. I just met him and he's like met they've met family members. Like I was like, this is over for me. So I really needed Green to stay together if at all possible.
So were you surprised with how this vote went down then?
I was surprised by all the advantages played. I was definitely worried that it was somehow going to land on me still. Yeah, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was playing a vote on Jeff as like last ditch effort, but I had no idea how it was going to turn out.
Well, you end up voting the majority. 3 votes Melissa are nullified by our idol. You vote with Carl and Melissa for Jeff. Jeff plays a shot in the dark, misses. Jeff is out.
Yes.
How's the fallout to all this?
It was such a funny, it was like very chaotic and like everyone was emotional, but it really felt like, wow, we're playing Survivor. We're really doing the thing now. Maddie was like crying. I don't even know if he was actually crying because at one point I sat down next to him and I was like, I don't want anyone to be crying alone because I was crying alone earlier. And he was like, I'm going to be okay. I'm just going to pretend to be really upset. And I was like, huh, okay. I don't know what Maddie's strategy was. Ethan was teary-eyed. He like felt like his game had been ruined. I felt awful because I had like changed my vote and didn't tell Ethan, obviously. And so I was worried that I had broken trust with him. Jordan was so mad at everyone except for Maddie, maybe. She like came up to me and was like, I tried to save you. So yeah, and then Melissa was just like, I don't know why everyone's so upset. Like we're having fun. And then Carl was like, we have donuts back at camp. So it was just like chaos. And then Ethan lied to Jordan. Jordan was like, how did you vote? And Ethan said that he voted for Jeff and that I voted for Melissa. And he says that in front of me. And I was like, what are you doing? But now I'm like complicit in his lie. So I just had to go along with it. But then like a minute later, he goes and tells Jordan the truth. So then Jordan's like, why are you people lying? Like shouting. So then I had to go and be like, yeah, I voted Jeff and this is why. And she was like, fuck it, I'm mutinying. And it was chaos. I think I convinced her not to mutiny. And I was like, I felt like I could repair trust with Ethan, work with Ethan, Jordan, and Maddie, and get probably Carl out, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what I would have actually done, but I was like, I have like an avenue here to work with Jordan. So yeah, that's what I was hoping. But obviously she decides not to mutiny and then she ends up mutinying.
Yeah, so you get the next challenge, and this is where mutiny advantages fly. Jordan does not mutiny, but then you see, let's see, Hannah hands it to Melissa, who hands it to Tony, who then mutinies to your tribe, which leads Jordan to leaving your tribe. And now it's all a new shuffle. So what's your thought of this new group with plus Tony minus Jordan?
I was pretty thrilled, honestly. I mean, I wished Jordan had stayed because, I was interested in working with her to do something. And also Tony and Melissa being together was not necessarily ideal for me because I knew that Melissa was closer to Tony than she was to me. So I was like, well, this puts me in maybe a trickier spot, but I was pretty happy because it just solidified the green majority over pink. But I was really annoyed because Hannah gave the mutiny to Melissa and not to me, who she had said she would give it to. So that's what I was feeling.
So from here, things go really well for this tribe, right? You win the next 3 straight challenges.
Yeah, that great endurance challenge was incredible also. Like that was one that I was like, I'm going to be out within 5 minutes. I just can't disappoint Melissa. It's like, I'm just going to wait until someone else drops and then I can drop. And then we ended up lasting the whole time.
You have the hot pursuit challenge.
Yeah, I dropped immediately. Not a runner.
And then there's a beanbag toss at the puzzle bend.
Yeah, that was really fun too, actually. I was really proud that I got my beanbag pretty quickly. The puzzle was a struggle. I recognized like pretty immediately that it was an X, but other than that, I maybe put like 2 pieces in. That was hard. Carl got banished. I think I was the one who was like, Melissa, you actually have to do this because she was like, I think I have an idea, but I'm not sure. And I was like, well, then you need to take over. And she was like, no, but we just needed like, again, too many cooks in the kitchen. Like you can't have 5-6 people doing a puzzle. It's chaos. And she did a great job.
So you have like a long period of time with this group of people. At the one point you come there and say, hey, we're an alliance, we're in colors with the Musty Misfits. How was this time? Any highlights for you?
Yeah, I mean, the moments we had back at camp together, highlight of my time at Reelfoot, honestly. Like the best time I've ever had playing Survivor, like online included, like best tribe I've ever been on. It was definitely like that last moment of happiness before the storm. I feel like there was like, yeah, the like origin of the Musty Misfits. Like Carl for once was not like workhorseing, and it actually kind of relaxed in the shelter. He was like sitting down, and we had donuts from the outpost trip, and there was no splitting off. It really felt like this group was solid. We were like making plans for merge, looking for a clue at the feast. We had like this fake idol that Ethan and Melissa had gotten, and we were like plotting on how to use it for like maximum chaos. Yeah, and I think Maddie was the one who said that we were like a group of misfits, and then I was like, yeah, we're the musty misfits because Maddie and his like digestive issues, and we all just stunk. But yeah, we laughed so much. There were so many like Carl, I think he had like burned himself and he threw his bandage, like his used bandage in the fire, and it exploded out of nowhere when we were all lying down. And like, I thought we were being shot at. And like, they had told us, I think that there were like some hunters in the area or something. So I was like, oh my God, we're under attack right now. Bandage had just exploded and I don't know why that happened. But no, that was like best time I had at Reelfoot. We laughed so much and I felt like really locked in with that group. I don't know if I would have gone to the end with that group. No, I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have gone to the end with that group, but I would have gone pretty far. So yeah, definitely honeymoon phase, thinking that if we had to vote someone out, because we said like whoever gets voted out, win the battle back, come back, and we're all going to work together. And that was like naive, wishful thinking.
You got half the battle there. You voted someone out, they came back in, just the work together after it kind of fell through.
Yeah. But we really, I mean, I think all of us believed that we could do it. Like, that's how solid that group felt. It sucks. That next immunity was the worst, the darkest moment of my time at Reelfoot, for sure.
As you're kind of enjoying this day, you watch Blake, then Shauna, then Jordan go out back to back from the original Encana tribe. On one hand, your original Akina members are staying safe, but what was your read on the situation over there at that point?
I was very confused. I think we had talked about the Outlast connections at that point. So I don't know. I didn't really think that much about connections that people had, just because I had none. And anytime I play a game, like I'm pretty new to this community. So I never know anyone. And everyone else always seems to know someone. So I didn't put a lot of stock into the Outlast things. And so that's probably why I wasn't really thinking about it at the time. But I was just like, wow, how did this happen that green is safe this long? And also, why are they voting out very strong challenge threats? It felt, I mean, probably for some upcoming merge reasons too, but it felt silly, especially when we did Hot Pursuit. I was like, I think that was right when they voted Blake out, and Blake was a good runner. So I remember whoever was voted out at that point, I was like, why did they get rid of him? Like, they could have really used more strength, but yeah.
So you have that last individual immunity, the last tribal immunity challenge. It's going to end up with a fish puzzle or something like that. Does not go well for your tribe, and you go to the last tribal council before.
Yeah, that was a big flop, and also very upsetting because the one thing I was like, I'm really good at, other than eating gross things, was like, a word puzzle specifically, and that was a word puzzle, and I was like, we didn't even get to try it, so that sucked. That challenge haunted me. I could not. So like the first time I swam out and undid a nut, I was like average time. I think I did it around the same length of time that everyone else did. But the second time I spent like 3+ minutes. I went back and watched it because I like to torture myself. I spent like 3 minutes trying to untie one knot before I finally heard Ethan being like, try another one. Like it didn't even occur to me that I could go to another set of puzzle pieces. My brain was just fried. I'm glad there was no camera out there because I sounded like a lunatic. I was just there like muttering to myself, like, this is your fault and Ethan's going to go home. Just like over and over again. I was crazy. Like, it was so hard. And then that's when I injured my leg too. And I was just like limping for the entire rest of my time out there. It was pretty nasty. It was like covered in gnats. It was a bad challenge for me. Least favorite challenge. I was definitely like crying after losing that because I think everyone thought that it was because of my leg because I was just like dripping blood. And like Charlie and Hannah, I think even Sandra came up to me from the other tribe and were like, are you okay? And I was like, no. And I think like Charlie was like, are you in danger? And I was like, no, but Ethan is. Like, I was distraught. I was convinced Ethan was going home and it was my fault. So yeah,
so that's interesting because I was curious, like leading up to this challenge, was Maddie P always with the boot, or you thought it was a real toss-up of who was going to go from this group?
Yeah, I thought it was a toss-up. I mean, I was honestly crying. I thought Ethan might be targeted now that Tony was here because we didn't need him to have a majority. And I don't know how much Melissa knew at that point about whether Ethan and I were like super tight. So yeah, I felt like I was trying to make sure Melissa and I were good. But I thought that she might want to target Ethan now that we had Tony. But I also was just sad about Maddie, like about having to vote out anyone. Like I knew it was probably going to be Ethan or Maddie. And yeah, I was really sad about Maddie potentially going. But I saw Sandra hand Maddie something after the challenge. And I went to him and he was like, you know, you, me, and Ethan, we're going to stick together, vote Carl, get Melissa and Tony to flip. And then he did say that he had an advantage, but he didn't say what it was. And I was like, this is not anything. Because I was like, okay, maybe it's not going to be a clue to an idol at our camp. And it wasn't an idol. It was like parchment. So I was like, and I wasn't confident in his plan. I didn't think Melissa would flip because Carl, like I actually I went to try and convince her. I was like, hey, Sandra handed Maddie something. We should vote Carl. And Melissa was like, no, I think it's just an extra vote. And I was like, no, I think it's an idol. And then she was like, okay, then let's just vote Ethan. And I was like, no. So, yeah, I don't know if she realized we were close or she just didn't care, but that terrified me. So I was like desperately trying to convince her like Ethan's solid. I felt like I was like trying to parent trap them back together. I was like, listen, like you keep making jokes about how Ethan tried to vote you out and he's like sensitive. You can't make jokes about that because it makes him think you're still upset. And I was like, Ethan, like this is how you talk to Melissa. Like don't be weird because she thinks you're shifty. And so it was awful. It's like trying to stop the divorce from happening. And me and Maddie and Ethan talked about going to rocks for each other. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do it. If the vote was on Ethan, I definitely would have gone to rocks. There was a moment when I would have gone to rocks for Maddie too, but Maddie not sharing what Sandra handed him, even though he like allegedly wanted to work with me, I got super squirrely. And I think Melissa maybe told Ethan, like, find out what Maddie has. And then Ethan came back and was like, Maddie didn't tell me. And I was like, you fucking liar. Sorry, am I allowed to curse? I've been doing too much.
You can curse.
But I was like, Ethan, you're such a liar. I didn't say this to him, but I was like, this is so suspicious. So at one point, just in case, when everyone was sleeping in the shelter, I did say that I was going to take a nap and use Maddie's backpack as a pillow and slowly unzip it like 2 inches from his face, like go through, even open his like medicine box, looking for an idol or whatever if he had something, and it was empty. I did also contemplate like spooning him to be like, oh, I'm cold, and then like reaching in his pocket. But Carl and Melissa were really loud and they like laughed and he woke up, so I couldn't. But yeah, I think like I didn't know what I was gonna do. And there was some talk between Melissa, Ethan, Tony, and I of like, maybe we split the vote on Carl, which I was like, this seems weird. And I think they're just lying to Ethan. But Ethan told Maddie about it. And I was so worried that after not voting with Ethan on the previous vote, that he would just dump me for Maddie whenever it was convenient for him. So yeah, this was the second vote in a row where I lied to Ethan, and the second vote in a row where I didn't know what I was going to do until I went to vote. Because like Carl on the walk to tribal gave me the speech of his life. Like he was crying so hard, and I just felt so bad. And then but really what it was Tony, honestly. And this was another example of Tony being such a good talker. Like, I think we talked the entire tribal. And I was really thinking about, going to rocks, or at least like threatening rocks. But Tony was like, listen, like we were talking about like the pros and cons of Maddie versus Carl and their connections on Nankana and who would be more loyal. And yeah, with how shifty Maddie and Ethan had been that day, I did end up throwing my lot in with them and voting against Maddie, which was like heartbreaking. It was the hardest vote. I saw Ethan like turn and look at me when the fourth Maddie was read, and like that image will stay in my head forever. It was so traumatic for me, and I watched it back and it's like 2 seconds, but it felt like he was just staring at me with this like kicked puppy dog look for like 10 minutes straight. That was the absolute worst. And he was like crying, and I don't know. We went back to camp and like everyone was acting normal, but it clearly wasn't normal. Like he obviously wasn't okay. He just had to act like he was. And I was like, I just lost my number one ally. So I'm like devastated. And he was also just like a big source of comfort, like my rock out there. So that sucked. And then I realized like I'm now in a group of 4 where I'm definitely at the bottom. I know I'm at the bottom. I knew at that point that Tony and Carl had worked together. So I was like, my game's over. That was definitely, it felt like the start of my downfall. So that was tough.
Had this group gone to another tribal council, what would have happened?
I don't think there's any way that Ethan doesn't go.
Okay.
Actually, I don't know. Maybe I would have gone. I don't think Melissa would have let me go, but I think Tony probably would have rather voted me out than Ethan. But I think Melissa probably wore the pants in that alliance. So I think I would have stayed and Ethan would have gone.
So looking at redemption, you have Debbie, Joe, Melanie, Jeff, Blake, Shauna, Maddie P. Who are your ideal 2 players to re-enter the game?
Blake, because of his eyes, the eyes he was making at me. And I really did want to work with Shauna, but I think I was asked this actually, and I think I said Joe at the time, because I felt that Joe was either going to be really chaotic and would just like make things messy in a beneficial way where I could hide behind it, or she would be willing to work with me because she had said she was close to me, or like closest to me. So yeah, I was thinking like Blake and Joe. But I really wanted to work with Shauna. I was bummed when she got voted out.
Well, you get half your wish. Shauna and Maddie P re-enter the game. You go to your merge feast. How was that?
Very awkward. I think I tried to talk to Maddie right before we sat down for the merge feast and was like, oh my God, you're back. This is great. And like, now I know that Maddie was like, Trinica just lied to me, like blindsided me. But I think he thought that I had like planned that the whole day. And I really hadn't. It really was like a last minute decision. But I did like at Tribal, like give him a thumbs up or something. So yeah, he was very cold to me. And I was like, oh, this is not looking good. Ethan was avoiding me and like only talking to non-Kana. Ethan was, of course, thrilled that Maddie was back in the game. So I was like, great. He's got his friend back, and now we're really not going to mend things. And we had this plan to like split up how we sat at the merge feast so that each of us was sitting next to a non-Kana member so that we could, or like, yeah, a pink 2.0 member, so that we could try and get any advantages before they did. And I like looked under my plate and like in my napkins and stuff, and there was nothing. So I was like, okay, I looked in the pitcher we had like 2 pitchers of juice, like tea maybe. So I looked at the bottom of that thinking it was going to be something like floating at the bottom. But they were in the fries, and the fries, I was on the opposite side of the table. So that was just never going to happen for me getting that idle clue.
So what is your agenda at this merge? Like, who are you trying to talk to? What are you trying to accomplish?
First thing, repair things with Ethan. Second thing, repair things with Ethan. Third thing, repair things with Ethan. Very laser focused on I've ruined my number 1 alliance out here. I did want to talk to Hannah. I mean, I wanted to talk to everyone. I didn't participate in the endurance challenge because I was injured. I could like barely stand for 5 minutes. So I was like, that's a wash. And I was like, if I've lost Ethan, I definitely need to build more relationships. So I talked to Shauna.
You can't talk to Ethan because he's in the immunity challenge.
Exactly that. Also that. Ethan was like, I'm not going to participate when we were walking up to him. And he stayed the whole time, a little shit. But yeah, no, I spent most of the night. I mean, I talked to Shauna and Sandra, and they both said the same thing to me, which is like, oh, we all see you as a threat. And I was like, oh, that's not great. And then I talked to Charlie, probably talked to him the most other than Hannah. And a bit with German. And I felt really good about Hannah in particular. She was very focused. I feel like we both had our focuses. I was like, Ethan hates me. She was like, I hate Melissa, because she thought that Melissa and Tony and maybe even me, I think that there was some plot that she didn't know about to like get Tony to mutiny. And there's always this plan to like get the mutiny advantage and give it to Tony. And so I kind of was like, hey, that wasn't the case. And she seemed pretty willing to hash things out. So I was like feeling okay that night. Because I was like, maybe I could work with Melissa and Hannah as like my main people now, since I don't have Ethan, German, Tony, Carl, and like a couple non-Kana that they felt good about, like Kiri or Shauna. So yeah, and then I didn't get to talk to Ethan that night. I told Melissa to wake me up when he got back, but she did not. So when I woke up the next morning, I saw he was sleeping. He was very like segregated. We're all on our different like tribe sides, except Charlie, I think, was sleeping on our side. But when I woke up, I saw that Ethan was on the non-Kana side. So I was like, oh, it's over for us. Dagger to the heart. Like, he wouldn't like look at me when he woke up, and he's like a grumpy morning person. At least he was out there. And I kept trying to like meet his eye, and he was ignoring me, and I was like, ah, it's fine, it's just Ethan. But then he would talk to non-Kana, and he was like, good morning, and I was like, oh, I was so demoralized. I just like that morning sat by the fire with Carl, and Carl was being so snarky. Like he said, it's his strategy to like play up the animosity between him and Pink. I don't know why, but I was there with Carl, watching everyone pair off and talk, and I was like, "Wow, this is how my game ends." I would like stand up and try and grab someone, but then they'd be like, "Oh, hang on, I'm just going to talk to someone else." So I was like, always like not the priority, and I was like, "Oh," so that was rough for sure.
So, who do you want to see go home from this merge tribe first?
Kiri.
Because?
Well, at that point, well, I guess actually I would probably say Maddie, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. So like realistic person was Kiri, because every person I talked to on Pink or Pink 2.0 said that they were good with Kiri. And I even was like starting to kind of like, you know, talk to people and be like, oh, it's kind of interesting that like everyone's good with Kiri. But everyone was like, yeah, because Kiri's great. And I was like, okay, not going to happen. No one seems to like realize that this is threatening. So yeah, Kiri. And then second would probably have been Sandra, just because I was not getting good vibes. She just, you know, she was friendly enough, but it was pretty clear she wasn't going to say a name to me. I was just like, it's obvious she doesn't want to work with me, so she can go then. And I wish Melissa and I had like worked on that, because, you know, I would have much preferred that Sandra went over Shauna, because Shauna and I had a great conversation. I felt like she was the first person to approach me. And yeah, we just never circled back together. So I think, you know, there's a world in which I could have flipped at that vote and worked with Shauna, but they were coming from Melissa, and I didn't want a green to go at that point. So it was tricky.
So were they not pulling for you to flip that much?
No, Maddie came and talked to me and Ethan. At that point, Ethan and I had a conversation. I told Ethan, I said, I will fall on my sword for you. I was like, I don't even care about winning at this point. Like, I was so dramatic. But so Ethan and I were good. And then Maddie was like, would you guys vote Tony? And like, I was like, yeah, not for that vote, but yeah, I'll vote Tony. Like, Tony was on my list of threats. So, the problem was just that Ethan and I were both like, not now. I also knew Tony had an idol, and I told Tony that I knew he had an idol because I felt so bad about it. And I also thought that like he was going to open his bag and see the idol sitting at the top of his backpack and be like, this wasn't where I put it. And then Melissa was going to be like, Trinica took everything out of your bag. So anyway, I told Tony that I knew he had an idol, or that I knew he had an advantage. And I also told him that I told Ethan. So I was like, the odds of Tony playing this are pretty high. So I can't say to Maddie that I'm going to vote Tony out this round. And then otherwise, Hannah and German were the two others who knew. They weren't even trying to get me to flip, actually. German was just paranoid because his name was out there, because Tony was just going around. Tony, so chaotic. People would ask Tony what he was thinking, and he would just say German. Like, he was just like laying down in front of Charlie and a couple other people. And he was like, yeah, I want German gone. I was like, Tony, like, don't just say that shit. And it was also frustrating because Melissa and I were trying to like basically pull Hannah back to our side. So I was like, what are you doing? You know, the one thing that will turn Hannah on you immediately is saying you're going to go for German. So yeah, they weren't trying to pull me, but I definitely thought that German and Hannah were with us. That was the only time I was blindsided, I would say, in the game.
Do you feel like you were able to adequately repair things with Ethan, or things are still really rocky?
No, I think I was able to repair things. I think I always had like a low grade paranoia after that, though, because, you know, I told him I hope he read how sincere I was when I was like, I will do anything to get you as far as I can in the game, because I just felt so bad. Like I knew at that point, like, I cannot betray this man again. Like I had wanted to vote him out at some point. in the future. Like I knew I couldn't go to the end with him, but at that point I was like, someone else has got to take him out because I can't betray him again. So we were good, but I had told him, like, I know that words are not going to repair this and it's going to take action, but like, just know that I'm never going to betray you ever again. Mm-hmm. So I felt like we were good. And it was hard. That vote sucked because we didn't have enough time to really scramble. And I think that we could have pulled together something other than what happened. But, you know, Melissa was like, no one's deciding on a name. Let's just do Shauna. I think like ideally if Ethan and I had figured our shit out earlier, that I could have taken him with me to Hannah and German and seen if we could make something happen there, which would have maybe gotten us in on that majority alliance. Maybe it seems like Maddie was very suspicious of me, so that probably wouldn't have gone very far. But you know, if I had more time, maybe. But
yeah, because it seems like a real avenue is you and Ethan. You know Tony is an idol. You can, and so you say we vote Tony. Tony will nullify our votes. That way we look good. We look good to Ethan and Melissa. Maybe we can still. We look good to Hannah and German and co. But we can still maybe keep connections with Melissa and Tony because they need us because they're on the bottom. That seems that could have been an avenue you could have gone down.
Yeah, it would have been great, but you know, I don't know. I think just I spent so long not talking to Ethan because at one point I was like, I'm not gonna chase no man. Like if he wants to work with me, he can come talk to me. But then he wasn't coming to me. So
you faced.
Yeah, like we spent so much time not talking to each other. And if he had come back to camp. Here's the thing. I was so mad that Ethan went and stayed out for that challenge because I was like, you don't need to do this. It's going to put a target on your back. And I also needed to talk to him. And I think he needed to talk to other people. But yeah, if we had figured things out the night before and then I had woken up fresh, happy, in a committed alliance, then maybe I could have done a bit more work to get Ethan and I into a better position. But we just didn't have the time. Like I didn't even know I was on the right page with Ethan for so long that morning. So I wasn't factoring him in as a guaranteed second vote that I could like promise people, you know? And like, yeah, Ethan and Melissa also, it was just, we were not on the same page, that group of 5, 6.
The Musty Misfits was not a streamlined alliance.
Yes, no, we weren't. Yeah, Ethan and Melissa, I don't know who came up with German as the vote, but they like told me, oh, it's German. And I told them like, I'm fine with the vote being German. But like at this point, Hannah and I had talked and said like, even if we're not on the same page, we're going to be honest with each other and just let each other know what's happening. So I was like, if you guys want to vote Ethan or German, that's totally fine. But I'm going to tell Hannah. So if you want to vote for someone and you want Hannah to know that you're voting for them, then let's do German. But that's like the only time I really like stuck my feet in the, that's not even a phrase. What am I saying?
Put my foot in the ground.
Put my foot in the ground. That was the only time I did that, other than the Danny vote, I guess, wanting to get Melanie out. Because I was just like, I'm not going to lie to Hannah, because at that point, my number 1 was Melissa and my number 2 was Hannah, because I hadn't, like, I didn't think Ethan and I were good. So I was like, yeah, we can vote German, no problem, but I'm going to tell Hannah I'm doing it. And just, it was just a matter of not having enough time to figure out a vote.
So it sounds like you were not surprised to see Tony play his idol.
No, he was like, should I play this? I think I told him not to, because I was talking to Hannah when he was talking to Melissa and Ethan about how he saw them say his name. So I missed that. And I just came up and he was like, should I play my idol? And I was like, no, you're fine. So thank God he played his idol. Yeah.
German plays his idol. And then Tony gets 7 votes.
Yeah. Not great seeing those votes roll in. I mean, it kind of was, because I love a successful idol play. So just as a fan of Survivor, that was really fun. But very not good to see an ally go and realize that my other ally, Hannah, who I felt really close with, had fully lied to me. So
yeah. Shauna goes out. You have the push me, pull you challenge. You were holding up the iron rod. Ethan wins that challenge. What is the scramble like? Because it sounds like Tony's trying to lay low. And so what are you up to during this time? So
German had taken an idol from Kiri at that point humanity, which I'm really mad about because I didn't have the idol clue, obviously, but every single tribal since German tackled Melanie for an advantage clue. I searched every time I went into tribal council. I was searching high and low. I would walk up to the podium. I'd look behind the podium. I think I saw a cookie that they had made, like a Reelfoot cookie. And I was like, is that an idol?
Can I eat it?
It's a cookie. And I had looked in that, like at the top of the little teepee, I looked up there, but I think I was just the wrong angle. I was like farther back. So I didn't see the idol, which is a big bummer.
All right.
But,
so what if you had the idol, when would you have used it?
Hey, so this is one of the things I asked my wife to do. What would happen if I think I ended up deciding that I may have used when would I have used the idol? I probably would have used it on the vote when Melissa was safe. When
Tony goes home?
Yeah, I would have used it the next tribal uselessly. I think in retrospect, I can think like, okay, they're definitely voting out people who can do challenges. And I was like, not a challenge setter at that point. Like I could not walk. So I should have realized that I was probably not going to be the target. Also, I don't know if Hannah was like protecting me in any way. I had a good relationship with her. She was being pretty honest with me when she could. So, but I think I would have just gotten paranoid probably and used it earlier.
So what were your conversations with Hannah, German, and Charlie like during this round? Final 11.
I was really concerned that Ethan was going home. I was like shouting to Ethan when Tony was like begging him for the win. I was like, don't do it. Like I was really concerned. And then Sandra was sitting next to me on the mat after I had gotten eliminated. And she said like, yeah, that's smart. Like she kind of implied that Ethan shouldn't have given Tony the immunity. So I had a feeling that it was going to be Tony actually. But then who was I talking? Oh, I was trying to make plans with German and Hannah. They at that point asked me about flipping. And I was like, we had a really good, especially me and Hannah, but also me and Hannah and German. Like I felt like I was the bridge between our alliance and that side in some ways. So, I was like, I might flip, but we have to agree on a name. And I told them, like, I knew they didn't want to vote anyone from their alliance out at that point. So I was like, I think they asked me, like, who from my alliance would I be okay with going home? And I said that there was people I would be more okay with than others. And I said Carl, and I think I said Tony. So they were basically like, you can flip now and vote with us. And then you'll be, like, in on it. And we're, like, vouching for you. It was really funny. It was like I was like a nerd and they had their cool friend group and they were like, we're going to tell our friends that you're really cool. So they were like, you can flip now, or if you can't keep this a secret, we'll do a blind vote and we won't tell each other who each side is voting with, but it'll still be open to you to flip next round. So, Hannah and I were like Romeo and Juliet at this point in the game. Like if Juliet ended up stabbing Romeo in the back at some point, we were like on separate sides, but like really trying to keep each other safe. At least I was trying to keep Hannah safe. I don't know. We'll see during her interview. And I was trying to keep German safe. I told them both, like, I may not be able to vote with you this round, but I will make sure that neither of your names are on the block. And they seemed open to like maybe flipping next round too. So I was like, okay, this is great. So I go back to Melissa and immediately she's like, the name is German. And I was like, I was so annoyed. Because then I had to go back to Hannah and German and they were already like, let's go tribal. And I was like, ugh. So I didn't have time. So I went back to German and Hannah and I was like, hey, didn't have time to talk to them. Let's do a blind vote and talk again next round. So again, a victim of not having enough time to strategize. It just sucked because then I felt like I was doing all this work to try to like set something up to protect that like 4-4 and move us ahead somehow. But I felt like Melissa would like decide on a name. And it probably wasn't even Melissa, but in my head, I was like, Melissa's like telling us what to do. And then there's never time to hash it out and like talk through it. And so it was like not only affecting my ability to keep my 4 safe, but also affecting my relationship with German and Hannah. Cause now I'm voting for German and I don't know who they're voting for because we're doing a blind vote. So, I mean, I could throw a vote, but what's the point of that? So now like after
making German not mad at you.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but ultimately I don't think they were going to do much. I think had I flipped, I would have not ended up much closer to the end than I got. So I'm not too I don't know, maybe. We could play that all day. So let's move on.
Yeah. German's asking, can I breathe? The answer is no. You're going to get 10 more votes minimum.
Yeah, German, listen, I was trying, but couldn't quite hack it.
So Carl goes out. If you weren't in the minority before, you know you are definitely in a minority. The next challenge, the Tell Me a Story challenge, where Melissa wins.
Yes, I heard memory and I was like, yes, finally a challenge I can win. And
With
then I
running.
heard running and I was like, gonna go ahead and clock out. That sucked. I knew all the answers actually, but there was just I could not run. Like every time I would start to run, I think I ended up like straining or spraining like a muscle in my thigh on top of the shin injury, on top of this weird like trench toe situation I had going on. It's like every time I would start to run, it was just like searing pain. So it was awful. Melissa won. She was super chaotic, which was great for me because I'm like, she's making herself a huge target. So hopefully they will not go for like me or Ethan. They'll go for Tony and then try and get Melissa next. And yeah, again, highly debating flipping to work with the other side because it was obviously that or be picked off one by one at that point. And I hope that I could convince German and Charlie to work with me and Ethan. I was trying to like, oh my God, again, trying to be a marriage counselor between Ethan and Hannah because their modes of communication were just diametrically opposed. Ethan was so mad at her because she like came at him and was like, you voted for Melissa. That wasn't cool. Like I've never seen Ethan like that angry. It was kind of funny. And I like went to Hannah and was like, you can't say things like this to Ethan. But yeah, so I like tested the waters with that core four of like me, Melissa, Tony, and Ethan. And I was like, hey, like, are we all just going to work together until we're all gone? And Melissa so fiercely said like, yes, it inspired me. I don't know if I would be considered like a villain in this game, probably given some tribal council outbursts. But I did really surround myself with heroes, which made for like tricky playing for me. But like even like Hannah and Ethan, the two people that I worked really close with, were both awarded female and male hero. And I think that proximity to heroics eventually rubbed off on me because yeah, I was at that point I think committed to the core four and was like, I'm gonna try and pull some of these guys over.
Someday you will have a heroes buff like this too.
Maybe, probably not this game, but maybe in the future. Yeah, so I just started speaking my mind that round. I think I knew that I probably wasn't going to be voted out before the others. I would probably be one of the last standing of that four. So I just, it's a very frustrating experience to feel so helpless. It's like you get this chance to play this game that you love, but then you can't even really play it. So I was just very honest about how I was feeling at Tribal Council. Yeah.
Is it this round where Tony goes home or the next round Melissa goes home that you have some conflict with Charlie?
That was the round that Tony went home.
Okay,
yeah.
so right now. Yeah. So this is the round we're talking about now.
Yeah. Before Tribal, Melissa came up to me and was like, you need to talk to Charlie. Like Charlie wants you to, Charlie's considering flipping, but he needs you and Ethan to talk to him. Which like really rubbed me the wrong way. But I went to talk to Charlie. I was like, if Charlie wants to talk to me, why isn't Charlie coming to talk to me? Why is he telling Melissa to tell me to talk to him? But I went to talk to Charlie and he just immediately, like, I was like, hey, Charlie, like Melissa said, you were like maybe going to do something, but that you wanted us to talk to you. I don't even remember. I think Ethan was there. But Charlie just like, it felt like a totally different guy. Like I had never seen this version of Charlie. And I think it's just like, he had power. Power corrupts absolutely. No, I think he just like, he was in a good position in the game and he was like probably a little cocky. But he was just like, oh, like now you come to me now when you need me. And it was just so bizarre to me because like up until that point, I had a really good relationship with Charlie. So it really like took me aback. Like I wasn't expecting it. And it was really upsetting. Like I just like, the tone that he took was so, it just felt like being kicked while you were already on the ground. And like, he never did say like, oh, like he said, you never talked to me today. And I was like, I talked to you 3 times today. I talked to you after the running challenge, before the running challenge. Like I talked to him a lot, but every time I went to talk to him, you know, I'd be like, how are you feeling about things in the game? And he'd just be like, oh, I'm exhausted. So I was like, okay, well, like, I mean, you already know what my pitch is, flip. And I'm not going to be a broken record repeating it over and over. So if you have something new that you want to do, I think it's your duty as the person in the position of power to come find me. So yeah, it was just a very like bizarre interaction that like really upset me. And then on the way to tribal, I was just like, I was talking to Kiri, I think. And somebody had said something about Charlie being the godfather. And I was like, that's right. He is the godfather. Like, why is he talking to me like this? And I was so angry. Yeah. So I don't know. It was just like, it was like a recurring theme at tribal council that we didn't talk to the other side, that we weren't like really playing the game. And that was just like super frustrating. Like it genuinely made me upset because I was constantly scheming and like constantly trying to figure out how to manipulate the situation to save myself, to save Ethan, to save any of our 4, approaching Sandra and Kiri and Hannah about a girls' alliance with Melissa. And then like Melissa didn't want to talk to them. So then I was like, okay, let's do something without them. I was approaching Maddie and trying to see if he would flip and work with Ethan and I tried to see obviously if Charlie would do anything. That went downhill. So it was like very frustrating to hear them say over and over that we were like self-isolating and not talking to anyone because I don't know. I didn't see that as the case. I mean, maybe some members of the core 4 at a certain point were doing that and not wanting to talk. But like, I was really talking to everyone, almost everyone. Maybe not German because like at that point, come on, I'd voted for him too many times.
Yeah, you cast your second vote for him this round.
Yeah. So, you know, but I don't know. I just like one of the awards that I got was Never Say Die, which I was really proud of because I have never had a fight for my life like that in a game. And I like truly never gave up. So that is why I would like pop off at tribal when they would say like, you guys didn't talk to us. Cause I was like, I'm here. Like, you know where my room is, you know, my address. I'm right here at camp. So if you want to come talk, like you can come talk. And again, I was trying often to talk to them. So yeah, I did get pretty upset at Charlie for the way that conversation went. And then I felt really bad because after Tony got voted out, Tony, I don't even remember what he said, but he said something because I didn't hear it at the time, but he said something to Charlie and Charlie was like crying. And then I was like, oh, well, now I feel awful. And like, I went to talk to him after and was like, listen, like the way you handled that situation was like really mature. And like you and I are good. Like, I don't want you to feel bad or like feel like I hate you or anything like that. Like I was like, we'll talk later, but I just wanted him to make sure that like he knew that I was good with him. But what actually, like, I think what went worse for us is that when we got back from that tribal, he came to talk to me and we had like a very good conversation. But yeah, we were walking to a challenge. So we were walking, talking the entire time. I feel like I must have talked to Charlie for like 45 minutes. Like I could have been strategizing with other people. I was not. I was mending things with Charlie. I'm not even on a strategy level of just like, yeah, like let's talk this through. And it went well, but then at one point he said something like, he was like, oh, there's nobody here filming this. Like, I wish someone was filming this, and like called one of the production members to like come film it. And I was like, whoa. And he asked me, he was like, can we like rehash this conversation in front of the camera? And I was like, it just like made me feel kind of gross because I was like, I mean, it's not a scripted show. I'm not gonna, I don't know. We've been talking for a long time. So I was like, I don't want to do this again on camera just to have it on camera. And then he was like, okay, well, I'm going to bring it up at tribal council tonight. And I was like, go ahead. But if you bring it up, like, I cannot guarantee how the conversation is going to go. I was just like, really like, I don't know, turned away from Charlie from him doing that. But then like, I wasn't upset with him, but I was just like, that was weird. But then at the challenge, I overheard him talking to German, Maddie, maybe Sandra, and like saying basically that like, I can't remember exactly what I overheard, but the general gist of it was like he completely painted our conversation in a different light and was acting as if I had like spurned him again or like wouldn't let him apologize or refused to apologize. And meanwhile, I was like, we had a great conversation. Like we both said sorry. We talked about like where we were coming from and like what was influencing that feeling. So it was just like, I didn't know if it was strategy or if he was just straight up lying, but that like, I was so mad at Charlie the whole rest of the game at that point. Yeah. And we're good now. We're good now. But it was a stressful time, I will say. Yeah.
So Kiri wins immunity to that Towel Smash challenge. Are you making any inroads? Are there any inroads to saving you, Melissa, and Ethan, or is it just kind of like ship's going down and we're sinking?
Yeah, I'm trying, definitely trying. Yeah, I mean, I think the last inroad we had was really Maddie. Like, Ethan thought Maddie was going to flip and vote Carl, which I was like, Maddie's not doing that. But that was the last time anyone in our group, I think, had any hope. No, I mean, this was just our unhinged era. Like, we, Ethan and I were out in that challenge back to back, and we were just messing around. Like, we were like, let's hide this like fake idol, even though Maddie definitely told them that we have a fake idol advantage because he knew about it. We were just goofing around, having a good time. But at the same time, everything we did was still very strategic. Like, I remember I think I said to Ethan, like, let's cheer Kiri on. Because if they think that Kiri is really well liked by us and potentially by our other alliance who have been voted out, and then she just won immunity, like maybe they'll want to start targeting her. And like, I would go up to members of the Six and be like, the jury thinks this. So they just make shit up, just trying to get them to like have any paranoia. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, we knew what was going on. Like we had German mentioned our little trio confessional Kiki that we had. We had a good time. They were so mad about it. But no, we were just absolutely delirious. Like we were just like holding a flashlight under our chin, like one of us will die tonight. We were having a good time. And yeah, so I was pretty sure, I thought that maybe Ethan might go that night, but it ends up tying on Melissa and Ethan. And like, I immediately turned to Hannah and I think she was behind me. And I was like, please save Ethan. Cause I had just made it so far with Ethan at that point. Like that's my guy, did not want to be there. I was just thinking of like going home and having to like,
things are fully repaired between the two of you now over the course of this day.
Yeah, we're good. And I also just felt like, I betrayed him twice. And this is my way of doing like what little I can for him, which is to keep him like one additional round. And then he like, I think it was part of his strategy. He'll have to talk about that. But he was like, I don't have any fight in me. Like, just vote me out. And then I turned to Hannah again and was like, don't listen to him. Like, please save him. And I think they were probably already just going to vote Melissa. But yeah.
Do you vote for German or for Hannah at this tribal council?
I don't believe I ever voted for Hannah, so that was another German vote. Actually, I'm pretty sure that was my German vote because I remember my voting message. Yep.
Yeah, so you end up voting German 3 times in a row, then you vote Melissa on the revote instead of Ethan.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was sad. That sucked.
This takes you to day 7. How are you feeling at this point?
Just exhausted, beat down. Angry. It's very funny to me, like when you play these games, I just never had that experience. Like in real life, like it felt so much like us versus them. Like it felt like we were at war. Which is funny because like, me and Ethan, I think were a little more diplomatic is the word I'll use when it came to the other side. So, well, mostly. But so it's not like it was like tense at camp, but it was also just like, I think one of them somebody posted a photo, I think it was Stan, posted a photo on Facebook of like the house divided and you see like the barn and like the 6 of them on one side and me and Ethan on the other. So it was just very much like that the whole time. Like we knew it was going to be one of us, probably Ethan. And I was still trying really hard. I went to Hannah and tried to set up a Girls Alliance thing. And basically was like, can we save Ethan? Like at least this round. You'll still have the majority. Like at this point, it was just me and Ethan. So like, I think I came up with this pitch and like Ethan and I chose 2 people to pitch with it. And I think it was Hannah and Maddie. Obviously I went to Hannah, Ethan went to Maddie. And I was like, use us 2, take us to the end. The votes will be split between our alliance members, between Ethan and I, and you'll have a higher chance of winning versus going to the end with just non-Kana or, Pink 2.0, whatever, the Breakfast Club. And people not being able to differentiate your game. So that was our pitch, but no one took us up on it. That was a pretty pale pitch. I mean, it was the best that we could do, I think. But
you think there's going to give a pitch like, hey, use this as 1 vote vote off a competitor and at least get us to 6 and 7 instead of 7 and 8.
Yeah, I mean, that was the pitch. And also just like every tribal, I feel like I was begging them, like, is anyone thinking about what happens after the 6? Like, once you get to the 6, is anyone thinking about this? And
So
they all said no.
Did you have the read? In your prediction, did you predict it would be Charlie, Sandra, and Maddie P as the top 3 of that 6?
I predicted it would be Charlie and Maddie. I probably should have predicted it was Sandra because I think Maddie actually himself had told me that he was close with Sandra, but I literally just forgot. So yeah, Sandra, I was like, huh. And I was very wary of Sandra. I was really trying to get people to turn on Sandra, Kiri specifically, and Hannah, because Kiri had already flipped on Sandra at one point in the game. And I also was like, I know that she's, I can't remember her actual title now, but she works in law. So I was like, you have to be good with words to work in law. So she's going to be like lethal at final tribal council. Like we have to get rid of her. And Kiri kind of seemed like she was listening, but I think she just like, she was like, I don't have the numbers. I won't be able to do it.
Anything else about the Ethan vote?
Oh, it was just sad. Also, that challenge, like again, memory, but then again, running. I made it pretty far. I was like the final 3 with German and Charlie, but like by the time, that was so hard because we had to go under a wood thing, and I was just like throwing myself under it because I couldn't like get on my knees because of my injured leg. And I was doing like okay, doing the slow and steady thing because I knew I had the best memory probably of the tribe. But then when I got there for the final round, I was a little bit behind German and Charlie, and I saw that it was like 5 skulls in a row, and then like headdress, mosquito, and that was the pattern. So I was like, there's no way they're going to mess this up. And I can't outrun them now. So I was like, oh, it's over. So yeah, no, it just, I knew what was going to happen. I thought it was going to like be worse to see Ethan go. But at that point I was just exhausted and angry. Like I didn't have anything in me, but just like frustration. So, you know, we did the best we could. We tried to pitch them. They all kind of came to us. It was very funny. They came to us. I think I said this at the time because like German and Hannah came to us, and I was like, "Oh, you saw our vibe from across the bar, and you wanna work together?" And they were like, "No, we're gonna vote like." And then Charlie came to us, and Charlie too. My pitch to Charlie was like, "Hey, like you're seen as an emotional player, and if you don't do something strategic, you're not going to get any votes at the end." So I was like, do something strategic. Like how many times does the emotional player win? Not super often. But yeah, nothing worked. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
The shot in the dark play. Is it because you're like, hey, they're splitting on me and Ethan, and let's just see if they get one more round?
Yeah, Hannah, I went to talk to her again. Like we had open lines of communication this whole time. I think I asked her if it was me or Ethan. And I think that was the first time that she didn't like just straight up kind of like tell me I was safe. So, and I just like, I didn't think the shot in the dark was going to hit. So doing it now, I don't even know what my decision was. I just decided to. It's just like, whatever, I'll throw shit spaghetti at this shit wall.
You play your shot in the dark, you miss, you get 2 votes. Ethan gets 4 votes. This leads us to probably one of my favorite moments this season, which is the auction.
Yeah.
Because you are Survivor rich.
Yeah, I was rolling on it. I had bank.
I mean, I think Maddie P has secretly like, I don't know, 4 or 5 tokens. I can't remember the exact amount. And then everyone else has like 1 to 2. And then you're just like, I have everything. And talk to me about your strategy coming into this auction.
Well, I didn't even think there was going to be an auction. I thought it was going to be the freaking binder. I had been the only one like on my OG tribe studying that binder. I knew that Pink was studying it a bit, but I was like, oh, I'm going to be able to win this.
If
like,
you just made it to the final 5.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, there's going to be a challenge with no running and memory. And I got it. So I was studying the binder, and I had like took a nap on top of it so that they couldn't have the extra binder to study. And then I wake up and they're like, it's an auction. So I was so petty. I was so angry. I like had my coins all in my extra buff, and I was just like swinging it around. Like I was pissed. And they were all talking about like, oh, I only have like 1 or 2 tokens. And I was just like, I hate you all. And I love them as people. I just want to preface again with that, but I hated them at this time. Like I was like, oh, I want them all gone. So I didn't care about any food or comfort. I only wanted to get an advantage. So my strategy was bid on only uncovered items because I thought that the advantage would be uncovered, or sorry, bid on only covered items because I thought the advantage would be covered. Yeah, no, I ended up with so much food. German at one point was like, what is this golden corral? Because I just was like surrounded by food that I'm like angrily eating. I don't even want it. I'm just like forcing peanuts down my throat and like scraping peanut butter off the bread because I was like so full too at this point. But I was like, let me just get as much protein. Like at one point, someone asked, I think Josh ran the auction. Someone asked him if I could share my food. And I was like, do you think I would if I could? And they were like trying to tempt me on items. Like there was a chair advantage, a chair back at camp. They were like, Trinica, you don't want the chair? And I was like, only if I can ensure that none of you will use it. Like if I can be the only one sitting in the chair, yeah, sure. But no, I don't want you guys to have comfort and then vote me out and you have a chair. Absolutely not. And yeah, I saw Maddie holding a token. I did not realize he got tokens at Battleback. I thought the one that I saw him have was like the only one he had. So I was just keeping track of Sandra, who I thought had the most, the most amount. I knew that she had like 3. So I was like, okay, as long as I keep like more than 3, I'll be good. And then obviously Maddie had more. And the advantage was uncovered. So that was like the other really frustrating part. Like it was devastating. I was heartbroken. I think I like cried in my confessional. It was just the worst feeling because like the 6 is just like laughing and having a good time and eating their food, and I'm just there guzzling peanut butter. So sad. But then there's the reveal that there's like another item, and I got the phone call home. So I mean, would I have preferred the advantage in the challenge? Absolutely. But it was really nice to talk to my wife.
Comment from Josh. Sitting in for your call home after the auction and you didn't even want to use the full lot of time was so funny.
I don't like crying in front of people. And I also like, I don't know, I'm just so awkward. Like I didn't want to be vulnerable in front of anyone. So I was just like, okay, babe, anything else? Like, okay, like, I gotta go.
Dogs are okay? Great, thanks.
Yeah. She was like making fun of me over Ethan. She's like, I saw a video, you're giving Ethan hard eyes. I was like, oh yeah, I don't want to be razzed right now in front of Josh. So yeah, that sucked. But
would that advantage have made a difference in the challenge?
That's a great question. Hard to say. I think so. Like we had done the other grip challenge, and I was totally fine when it's just like holding it up against me. Yeah. But I don't have like very good upper arm strength.
And that ball paddle is really heavy, and it's an endurance challenge.
Heavy. It's very heavy. Yeah, I know. I think it was Josh again doing the commentary for that, and was like, "Oh, Trinica's ball's moving a lot," but I was like, "I'm good." Like I felt very comfortable letting the ball roll as it wanted to. I was like one with nature. Like if I need to do a slight readjustment, bring it back, I can absolutely do it. But as soon, I knew that we were going to have to extend our arms at one point, so I was just trying to like outlast that moment. And I was thinking like, if Maddie just drops, then I'll be able to reset because I picked up the paddle in such a weird way. I was like holding it almost upside down. Like my wrist was like twisted. So my wrist was actually the only thing that was really hurting me. So I was like, okay, if Maddie drops, we'll have a minute to reset and I can like fix my grip and then maybe I can do this. So that was the only thing, is just praying for Maddie to drop. And he didn't. I like waited till the last second to extend my arm because I was like, once I have to extend it, it's probably going to be over for me. So I don't know. I think, yeah, psychologically, if Maddie hadn't had that extra life and I had, there's, a world in which maybe I win. But I think like straight upper arm strength, he probably would take me. I think I would just have to beat him like mentally somehow.
So Maddie has immunity. You're the last person who is not original. Hold on. Comment from Josh. If you were able to stretch the arm, I think you would have had a shot, but Maddie was very determined, very telling of his story to come. Lol.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. Yeah, that was rough. I think I asked Maddie after the auction too, like, did you get something that would have saved me? Because I was just so upset. Like, I just needed to know. And he was like, no, I don't think so. I was like, okay, that makes me feel not at all better, actually, but kind of.
So as the lone person not in the Breakfast Club, how do you fight in this final round?
God, I wanted to be the one to make them kill each other so bad. My final pitch was pretty simple and also impossible to convince anyone of. I was like, hey, go to me go with me to the end and nobody will vote for me. Like I think maybe Maddie and Hannah had both implied to me that I didn't have a story to tell the jury, which I was like, perfect. That's exactly what I want people thinking. That's what my entire game has revolved around. So I was hoping to convince them that they wouldn't vote for me, but like, come on, they were going to vote for me. Like, I don't know. I was really trying to say, like, you know, Melissa and Tony really respect gameplay. They're going to say that I was dragged here. Ethan's going to vote for Maddie no matter what. Carl and I were never that close. I was just saying anything that I could to get them to take me. Yeah, ideally, I wanted to go with like Hannah and Charlie. But I was willing to settle for Charlie and Maddie. I knew Maddie was going to go with Charlie. And I would have happily gone to the end with them. Because I mean, if there's one thing I feel confident about, it's my ability to like use words as a weapon. So I was ready to make a case for myself if I could convince them that I wasn't a threat at the end. But sadly, it was not so. I think the problem is that like I had tried to make it seem like, oh, I have like a lot of social anxiety, which I do, but like, you know, like I'm not going to be a good talker in front of people at the end. I'm going to be nervous. But then for the past 2 or 3 rounds, all I had done at tribal council was like, every time someone would say something, I would like pick apart their arguments and like try and be like, but what about this? And like, I was like verbally debating them. So I can't convince people that I can't talk if that's all I'd been doing for like 3 rounds. So, you know, never say die came back to bite me in the ass, because it was very clear, I think, that I was going to be someone to reckon with if I made it to final tribal.
You didn't vote German, though. You voted Sandra.
Oh, I didn't. I had my fun. Yeah, I was just trying to freak him out.
You know, had you given that vote, he would have tied for most votes in the past like 5-6 seasons of Reelfoot.
Yes,
I'm glad I denied him
another accolade. No, I remember I went to, I just want to see them panic a little bit. I was like, God, if I only have a little bit of time, like, I just want them to freak out. I like went up to Maddie and again, like didn't even think about him being close to Sandra. And I think I was like, oh, what if I say I'm going to vote Hannah and then like we vote Sandra because she's a big threat. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And I like shook his hand to make them all think, because they were watching. I was like, oh, I'm going to make them think that like Maddie's flipping. And then I like said something at tribal to imply that people were flipping with me. And then I went to Kiri and like whispered, like, vote Sandra. So I was just fucking with them. It was fun though.
So you were voted out in a 5-1 votes. Kiri gets her shot in the dark play of the work, and with that, you are on the jury. As a jury member, what were you looking for in a winner?
It's hard with that 6. It's hard because it was hard to differentiate their games for me, which is something that we had like warned them about. I think for me, the social game was one of the most important aspects. I truly don't care about immunity wins like at all. It's the most boring part of Survivor for me. I don't care if you're good at challenges. So with the Breakfast Club, with the exception of like Hannah and Maddie, they had all done a pretty bad job of jury management, in my opinion. Which again, like we had a very contentious time as a tribe. So I understand why. But I wanted to, they were going to have to really, anyone other than Hannah and Maddie were going to have to do a really good job of like convincing me that their social game was good pre-merge in order to convince me to vote for them. And I also wanted to understand strategy because I did feel like the game they played was very comfortable and safe. And not particularly like strategic or interesting to watch, which as a fan of Survivor, I do want to see something interesting. And again, they had all said that they didn't think past making it to final 6, which was crazy to me. Like that's a crazy thing to admit in front of a jury. So that was nuts also and like disappointing. So I wanted to hear some pretty significant strategic thinking at final tribal council. I know people thought that I was like very anti-Charlie and was never going to vote for him, but I genuinely had an open vote going into final tribal council.
So looking, you asked kind of 3 things, right? You asked Maddie, like, you know, why do you think I voted for you? And like, I don't think you understood the dynamic of the Queen of 5. Do you feel like he answered that well?
He answered it honestly, which I appreciated. He, you know, I asked that because again, like part of the social game is understanding where you stand and where you stand with other people. And I didn't feel like he had a good sense of that if he was like so convinced I was blindsiding him the entire time. Because yeah, I definitely was willing to work with him. But so yeah, I don't think that he answered that particularly well, just because he genuinely didn't know that I was with him. But at that point, like, he had done such a good job, like, he would have had to really flub it for me to like not vote for him, I think.
Because you asked Charlie, like, hey, like, can you talk to me about your strategy and the way emotions factor in your strategy, which you kind of alluded to. You had that conversation before and saying, hey, this is how I'm seeing you as a player. You feel like his answer helped you there?
No, I really, really, like, we had a jury roundtable, and so the previous vote, actually, when German was voted out, I felt like Charlie was like speaking with like a crying voice and like making a crying face, but not actually crying. And I was like really like keyed into this and was like, oh, Charlie's a genius. Like, Charlie is pretending to be emotional, but it's like all part of his strategy. And like, I really wanted him to say that that was happening. I was convinced that was happening. So I wanted him to like own up to that. And he hadn't said anything to that point until that point in Final Tribal Council. So I was hoping he would be like, yeah, it's all part of my strategy. But he was like, no, I was just genuinely emotional, which is fine. But not what I wanted to hear from like someone I was going to vote for.
And then you ask for players, raise your hands if you think you have their vote. No one raises their hand for you. Are you surprised, hurts, or just like whatever?
Oh, I'm not hurt. I'm not hurt. Yeah, I wasn't surprised. But again, I want to know that you guys understand your social positioning in this game. And I felt like none of them did. Like, Maddie didn't raise his hand for Ethan, which was like, what? And later he was like, I just didn't want to seem like full of myself. I was like, okay. Yeah, no, I don't think any of them like really had a good idea of who was going to vote for who. And it made sense. Like, we were all so angry at that 6. I don't know. I have to imagine that they didn't think, like, maybe Maddie just didn't tell them like how close we had been. And I know it seems silly because we weren't together as a tribe that long, but for them not to consider that we would feel the least angry at Maddie was bizarre. So yeah.
Anything else you want to say about why you end up voting for Maddie?
No, I mean, I just think he absolutely killed it at Final Tribal Council. I actually was like, I almost didn't vote for Maddie out of spite, like before Final Tribal, so before anything happened. But just because Ethan was like, I'm voting for Maddie, and like was campaigning so hard for him that I was like, well, maybe I'll vote for Sandra. But once we got to Final Tribal, it just seemed very clear to me that Maddie was going to take it. He had the best opening and closing speech. He just really gave really strong answers. I'm shocked at how well-spoken he was, considering the states that we were all in at that point in the game. And especially him having been there an extra night, like the fact that he was coherent was incredible to me. And yeah, I knew that he had wanted to go to the end with Charlie. He made it to the end with Charlie. He somehow voted all of us out without any of us feeling like betrayed by him, as far as I know. Like, even at the end when he was like pretending he was going to vote Sandra, I just thought it was funny. I wasn't even mad at him. So like the fact that he could like so obviously not be working with us the entire time, but have none of us be mad at him. Like, I was like, you had the best social game. Your strategic game, although maybe not like super exciting to me in the post-merge stage, because you all like clearly we're making decisions together, as you said over and over again. Like, he admitted that he didn't like think through what was going to happen past the 6. At least I think he did. But so strategy, I was like, you're all kind of on the same level here to me. So it had to come down to the social, because that's the only other thing I cared about, and Maddie did a great job.
How was the post game?
Oh, it was great. I got to play a mini, which was fun. I got final 2 and then lost to someone who wasn't in the final 2. So that was fun and chaotic. And it was just like, it was hard coming out. Like, I had a lot of sensory overload for sure, but being able to like not have to overthink myself and just like be myself and not just worry and be paranoid was really, really cool. It was great. And shout out to production, just for everything. I mean, I don't want to start naming people and leave someone out, but I don't know. It was just, I had no idea what to expect. I thought we were going to like come out and play Flip Cup or something. So I like having an experience that was so like Survivor, like everything from like, you know, like Josh and Nate as they were like narrating, commentating on the challenges, and like just everything was so cool. Parker, who picked me up from the airport, made me feel so comfortable as like my first intro to production, but also as our like jury dad. It was just like they put so much into it, and it was like truly incredible. So
You won some awards that are behind you.
I
So
did.
what awards did you come home with?
I won Female Social Butterfly, which I was really surprised by. I mean, I did feel like I talked to everyone, but I didn't think that like anyone clocked that. So that was cool.
Production did.
Yeah. And I won Never Say Die, which was like really cool because again, like never had a fight like that. And then I won Best Duo with me and Ethan, which I really loved because we had some rocky moments in the game. Yeah.
Are there is there anything else about your game you want to dive into or talk to that we haven't had a chance to talk about?
No, I don't think so.
Well, shall we close out with some questions?
Yeah.
What's the coulda, shoulda, woulda you keep coming back to?
Flipping on the 4 and working with Hannah and German at Merge.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you would still come out in 7th place? Do you think you might have been able to go a little bit deeper?
I think I could have gone deeper. Had I never voted for German and like had that time, because like at that point in the game, Hannah and German and I had not had a lot of time to talk to each other as a threesome. So had I had more time to like build a relationship with them, I think I'm pretty convincing. I feel like I could have eventually gotten them to do something, be like, we got to turn on this 6 or 7 at that point. But yeah, didn't do it. Melissa really convinced me to be loyal.
Who surprised you the most out there?
Tony, because I thought he was this like homebred country boy who I would have nothing in common with. But like I said earlier, like we had more in common than I thought. He had such a wicked sense of humor. And I also thought he was going to be like purely a physical player. And then he was so strategic and such a good talker. Like I feel like if he had talked to me enough, he probably could have convinced me to vote out Ethan. Like that's how good he was. So yeah, Tony definitely surprised me the most out there.
Who do you wish you had a chance to work with but didn't?
Pre-jury, I'll say Blake, and then post-jury, Shauna. I just got such good vibes off of her, and I just respected her strength, and I feel like we could have built a good connection at Merge. And I wanted to work with winners. I didn't realize how little people cared about like org experience, but I had won twice in orgs, and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna work with someone else who's won, so that way, like, if they're targeting winners, it didn't even matter.
I continually feel like this merge would have been very different had Shauna not been the merge boot.
I know, and I didn't want her to be the merge boot. It sucked.
Reelfoot, let's say Reelfoot's having a returning season. What's one player from your season besides yourself you'd like to see come back and play again?
I'm going to say pre and post jury again so I can cheat and say 2 people. Pre-jury Jordan, I clocked right away that she was a huge social threat. And yeah, I think she could have done a lot of damage. So I would like to see her come back. And then post-jury, any one of the Musty Misfits minus Matt, since he already won and he needs to save some for the rest of us. But I'll say Ethan because I think his game was really affected by Maddie being there. And he had like tunnel vision on that alliance with Maddie. And I think I would have loved to see him like get a shot without the Maddie factor.
What was your favorite challenge?
Ooh, I love the medicine ball challenge, but I'm going to say the crate challenge. It was another one where I really doubted myself and really proved myself wrong and learned a lot about my capabilities. I think that's also when I strained that thigh muscle that made it so I couldn't run ever. But yeah, that was really cool.
Favorite camp life moment that maybe we haven't talked about?
Oh,
the Bandit one was pretty good.
Bandit was good. Ooh, oh yes, I remember because Tony forgot to talk about this and said I better mention it. So when Joe was going to be voted out, I talked to her and we were talking. So she had like a section where she would poop, and we were talking in that area. And as we were leaving, I saw something on the ground with like beads. And I was like, oh my God. So Joe's like has her back to me and I like memorize where it is. And then I'm like, I have to poop. And it was like pooping was a big deal because none of us had like done a lot of pooping out there. So I was like, I'm finally getting my poop. So I was like, everyone like stay away from this area. And they were just at the shelter. So they were like within sight of me still. So I like pretended to poop. And then meanwhile, I was like, I thought maybe that, it was a stick and it had like beads wrapped around it and it had like flowers like tied into it. It was like beautiful. So I was like, oh my God. Okay. I was like, this isn't an idol, but it might be pointing to an idol. So I like dug in the ground, didn't see anything. So I was like, okay, if it's not an idol, then maybe Joe does have the idol. And this is like, maybe she also got like fake idol stuff. So I just took everything off the stick. I took the flowers, I took the beads, there's like a bracelet. I like put it all in my garlic pill bottle. And then I was like, I have to tell Ethan. But then I was like, wait, information, currency. I'm going to use this to build with someone that I want to build with. So I went to Tony and I was like, Tony, I have to tell you something. You're the only one I'm telling. It's like, I found something. And then I show it to him. And it was like that Natalie moment of like, it's a fucking stick. Like he was like, isn't that from Joe's walking stick? And I was like, oh my God. Also like Joe had spent, so then when we get back and we're all talking to Joe about who she wants to vote, she's just like, it's just really hard for me because people keep stealing from me. Like first the cookies, I lost my vape. I think someone took it. And then someone just took my walking stick that I worked so hard on. And Tony just goes, what? The most obvious lie. Like I was like, oh, Tony's not going to be able to hold this secret for me. So I immediately like pulled Joe aside and was like, hey, I'm so sorry. Because she had said it was like the bracelet or something was like sentimental to her that she had used to decorate it. So I felt so bad. I immediately went to her and was like, oh my God. So sorry. I thought it was maybe related to an idol. Here's all your stuff back. And we like hugged it out. But yeah, that was a pretty funny moment. Like that was like when I realized Tony was actually hilarious. Like we had a good laugh at his like deadpan, like that's Joe's walking stick.
If you can go back in time, give yourself one piece of advice, what would you tell yourself before this game began?
Yeah, just like don't underestimate yourself. Like don't count yourself out before you're out. There were like moments like in the first grip challenge where I like tilted a little bit and just like dropped because I was like, oh, that's against the rules. But like production let German adjust a little bit. So I don't know, just like that seems like a small thing, but I think that was like my whole experience out there was like a lot of self-doubt. And it took like Tony and Ethan and Melissa like encouraging me to actually believe in myself more. So that would be my main piece of advice. And then also don't pack the day before and pack warm stuff.
Final question. Would you do a game like this again?
Yeah, I'd say I would. Yes.
Okay. Well, you've come to the dark side. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm definitely ready for my next game, whenever it may be.
Well, Trinica, anything else before we wrap up here?
No, just thank you so much for doing this.
No.
I was really nervous, and you are just like so easy to talk to, and you've done a really great job with everyone. So thank you for taking the time out to do this with everyone.
You made it very easy today. So I had a blast talking with you. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who is tuning in. I really appreciate your comments. This has been one of many Surviving Reelfoot deep dive interviews. We are getting to the final players. Probably like 6 left. But still, the end is near. So stay tuned. More to come, and have a good night, everyone.
Bye.